This is Choi Yeon-sung, the hero of our story, and now he is in the most dangerous place in hell. How did he get here, you ask? It all started as it always does. A gate opened on Earth and monsters poured in. The Earth needed heroes. Hunters with supernatural powers, and some people got these powers. One of those heroes turned out to be our guy from the gym. He was always a Sigma who was only interested in training. Even when his girlfriend dumped him because he spent all his time in the gym, it didn't bother him one bit. His friends called him a dumbass because of that, but he didn't care about them like he didn't care about his ex-girlfriend. When he became a hunter, a goddess appeared before him in one of the random dungeons and offered him a crazy deal, which he accepted without a second thought. The only condition was that Yeon-sung would have to train in a special training room in hell for thousands of years. By the way, time doesn't flow there like it does on Earth. But everything went wrong. The training room was destroyed by a magical storm, and our hero fell into the depths of the abyss. Will he be able to survive and become the strongest as he always dreamed? Let's find out. A few weeks later, the storm throws him onto unknown soil where he lands on his knees, thinking it had been a hard first training. He wonders if this is the next place for his training. Little does our dear Choi know that this is an empty place in the abyss ungoverned by any constellation. And the first time he finds there is a serpent-like monster that is humongous in size but has scales of stone. Choi wonders if he is supposed to catch the serpent. The serpent looks like Onyx from Pokemon, but despite that, it appears to be an A-rank monster, far above his own capabilities as a mere C-rank hunter. He wonders if the goddess has grossly overestimated his abilities, but soon pushes the thought aside, thinking that she must have thought of all this already. He punches it with all his strength, but it does not even move or react. His attack is too weak to hurt it. Choi watches as his fellow hunters discuss the divine celestial technique, a D-rank martial art. They dismiss it as too slow and difficult because they fear the long and frustrating path to mastering it. No one wants to take on this challenge except Choi, who is interested in the divine celestial technique, even though others think it is a waste of time. Two older hunters warn him that it is a slow and difficult technique. It relies on inner energy, which takes a long time to develop. Most people choose faster techniques, but Choi seems to be drawn to the challenge. The divine celestial technique had no specific way to gain inner energy, but every time he used its moves, namely, the celestial punch, the celestial footwork, and celestial kick, he would absorb the exposed energy, thus increasing his inner energy, bit by bit. If he could just repeat this endlessly, he would become a master, but not just anyone can do that. Coming back to the present, Choi is trying to attack Onyx. While it initially has no effect, he keeps it up for years and years. One day when he punches it with all his might, he suddenly feels a rush of power. The force of the punch is enough to even shatter a lot of the serpent's hard stony scales, and it stares in shock at Choi, who has now unlocked a new skill, a B+ rank internal strike. It is a big improvement for his divine celestial technique. The system notifies him that he has reached the first class. The achievement, however, leaves him with a pang of doubt. He recalls stories of another martial arts hunter, Xiaowen Li, a prominent Chinese warrior who had risen through martial arts alone. Xiaowen Li is known for his Zenith class, which holds the strength equivalent to the 6th circle of magic. When asked by reporters if he aims to grow even stronger, Xiaowen Li replies that his goal is to become S rank, an honor no martial artist has ever achieved before. But this is slightly demotivating for Choi, who believes that it would take him nearly 1,000 years to reach such a rank. Nonetheless, tears of joy sting the serpent's eyes on realizing that Choi's training has ended, and so have the serpent's days as a punching bag. Choi assures the serpent that he has no intention of killing it. After all, he was the one who had chosen it as a training partner, and their battles have been beneficial to him. When Choi is wondering where he has to go to start training again, the serpent bows its head, lifting him up, as if offering him a ride. Choi is surprised but thanks the Onyx, as it takes way too long to move around on foot. It has been 100 years since he first arrived in this abyss. His memories drift back to the sound he heard upon arrival. A deep, resonant hum, like the distant echo of a mana storm. He remembers wondering then if the goddess herself was guiding him. Now, as the serpent carries him forward, he muses on the possibility that his training here might soon be nearing another milestone. But of course the serpent hisses. Although our idiotic Choi might not know, but the Onyx absolutely knows that going into a mana storm willingly is a crazy idea. Despite trying to convey that they might die if they enter, Choi is headstrong, and the serpent does not convince him otherwise or talk back. Ah, what a sad day to be a serpent. Together, they plunge into the heart of the storm, one of them in cheers and the other in tears. Choi and Onyx have finally emerged from the mana storm. The serpent is still shocked by the horror of what they had just passed through, but Choi is still under the hysterical misunderstanding that the storm was a form of transportation for people in the abyss. Yet, he not only survives unscathed, but also thinks it's beneficial. After reaching a higher level, he has found that once the mana from the storm enters the body, it gets rid of fatigue and trains it at the same time. Further, he also finds the constellations as pretty amazing to be able to control such power to their will. Only the stone serpent understands the gravity of Choi's misunderstanding. What our boy Choi does not know is that he had barely managed to hold on to his life the first time, and that had luckily prepared his body to not be shredded by the current storm. All of a sudden, Choi wants something to eat, although he does not really feel hungry even after his 100 years fast. Onyx lowers its massive head and offers chunks of its own body to Choi, merely fragments of rock. Well, of course they fell from its body, so it is technically meat too. He wonders if he can really eat it. Onyx starts nudging the rock towards him as Choi wonders if this is payback for the 100 years. However, the sincere look on Onyx's face is evident. Choi smiles and hands it back, saying he cannot eat Onyx no matter how hungry he is. This small action somehow brings up a system prompt saying he has gained a complete understanding of the Great Serpent and has learnt the stone martial arts. With the new skill learnt, Choi could not wait to try them out. He felt strong enough to smash and flip the earth and flexible enough to swim through the air. Although the new technique is interesting, he does not intend to stop using the divine celestial techniques. Every transcendence of his deepens his enlightenment as he looks forward to what the new training exercise will be like. Driven by this desire, he eventually finds himself standing before a vast sea, its waters a shade of unnatural purple. Aware of the danger such an environment poses to a creature of stone, he commands Onyx to remain behind. Choi steels himself and strides into the waves, his body bracing against the oncoming tide, though his defenses soon falter under the unrelenting pressure of the poisoned sea. His divine celestial energy is getting consumed rapidly, and complete depletion of his energy can put his life at risk. Underwater, he even faces dangerous sea creatures that look like overgrown tadpoles. They're attracted to his energy. The water is poisonous, making it hard to breathe. But he sees something glowing in the distance. Perhaps this might be what he needs to clear this stage of his training. On land, Onyx's attention is drawn to ripples and bubbles at the surface of the water, before he is startled by a huge fountain of water shooting up in the air. However, it is just Choi jumping out of the sea. Choi is slightly out of breath as he mutters if that sparkly thing at the bottom was an objective the goddess assigned to him. He does not know how he will manage to pierce a poisoned sea, but his trust in his goddess does not even shake. This idiot finally decides that the only thing to do is to build up his inner strength using the divine celestial techniques. This is not really a very optimal solution. It took a long time. A really, really long time. Although he felt like he was getting stronger, it had already been 200 years for Choi. Although he knows time flows differently on Earth, this is still taking too long. In his struggle one day, as he is seeing his serpent friend eating rocks again, he is reminded of how he still wishes he could eat like a human. He is no longer hungry due to the abyss, but it still feels like he is missing something from his life. He remembers saying something similar almost 200 years ago. Just then, he finds a creature of the sea washed up on the shore, apparently dead, a peculiar beast that he decides to assume is an edible fish. Driven by hunger and curiosity, he tries to cook and eat it. How bad can it be, right? Choi needed to cook, but he did not have a knife, so he punched a rock and broke it into a sharp piece. He was calm and focused, showing how resourceful he could be. The stone serpent watched him with anxious eyes, wondering what the hell this human was doing. Choi started cutting the creature, but the toxic fish was melting both his knife and his chopping board too. He thought about eating it raw, but the serpent warned him. In a nervous fit, the serpent tried to bring something out of its mouth. This happened to be a special crystal, adamantine, that was the most precious treasure for rock-type monsters. As Choi uses it on the, fish, he realizes that it is not melting even after touching the toxins. Seeing this, he decides to make a set of cooking utensils for the time he trains in the abyss. Recalling the words of his clan leader, who had once stressed the importance of finding a hobby, Choi saw that it was useful to develop a hobby. Hunting, preparing, and consuming whatever he could find would help him while strengthening his physical resilience. With the utensils at hand, the most he could make was a raw slice of fish. Choi tried to eat the fish monster, but it was disgusting. Onyx was visibly repulsed, making strange sounds of disgust. Choi, however, was unfazed. He was used to eating bland and boring food. For him, food was just fuel, not something to enjoy. He was more focused on the efficiency than the taste. When Choi took a bite of the fish monster, it was terrible, and poison started spreading through his body. But the system prompt showed that he was using his inner strength to fight the poison. Not only did he survive, but the poison actually made him stronger. He realized that these creatures could be a source of power as long as he did not become intoxicated, and he could even harness their energy. Feeling stronger, Choi looked at the sea. He saw the creatures not as enemies now, but food. He decided to eat them all, using their power to make himself even stronger. He would not be afraid of their poison anymore. Choi spent a few hundred years exploring the depths of the sea, fighting and eating monstrous creatures. Gradually, he became immune to their poison and even learned to use it as a weapon. In the end, his poison immunity turned into unconquerable poison immunity. Now he was not just immune to poison, but also capable of using it by pulling on the poison in his dantian. Even his divine celestial technique ascended to new ranks. Even though Choi was powerful, he wondered why the goddess had not called him back yet. He thought about Earth and wondered if it was still the same. He knew he was very strong now, maybe even the strongest hunter on Earth. But the abyss was endless, and he felt he should continue his training. Thus, it was finally time to say goodbye to his stone serpent friend. They had been through a lot together, but the serpent could not go with him to the deepest parts of the ocean. It was too dangerous. The serpent did not want to leave, but Choi knew it was the right thing to do. He could not risk his friend's life. Choi bid a final farewell to his stone serpent companion and dived into the abyssal depths. He was now a presence that instilled fear in the hearts of the fish. As he delved deeper, he finally discovered the source of the energy he'd first glimpsed. A shiny gateway, a portal to the next, and probably more perilous trial. A wave of energy coursed through his body as the divine celestial technique recognized the challenge ahead. A body trained in martial arts automatically prepared itself when it sensed powerful opponents. However, even if Choi would not have trained in martial arts, he could have sensed that dense killing intent was being focused on him. Constellations were beings whose powers equaled almost that of gods. Their attributes within their domain essentially dictated the laws of nature there. And this just happened to be the domain of the dominator of blood and war. A towering and ghastly creature looked at Choi with a strange curiosity. When Choi said he was human, the creature scoffed, finding the idea laughable. It knew Choi was new to this place and decided to enlighten him. As it spoke, he pulled out a monstrous blade. The creature declared it would behead Choi as a welcome gift, a lesson for the newcomer. But Choi misinterprets this monstrous declaration as part of a brutal training program. In his mind, this entire encounter is some twisted simulation designed to push him to his limits. Readying himself, he harnesses all the energy within him, condensing it into his fist, transforming his ki into a compact and formidable force. But as the blade descends, Choi meets it with his bare hand, his hardened ki clashing with the razor-sharp steel. He counters with a fierce resolve, launching himself upward, landing a powerful kick that sends the creature staggering backwards. The other monsters watched in surprise. Humans were weak here, but Choi was different. Some whispered in shock, while others readied themselves for battle. Meanwhile, Choi remains unaware of the reality he faces. He thinks this is all just a test set before him. But the monsters misunderstood Choi's stance. They think he is trying to impress the Dominator to gain favor and look down on him, seeing him as weak and unworthy. The monsters attack Choi, eager to tear him apart. But Choi fights back fiercely, his punches and kicks powerful and precise. He moved with grace and speed, dodging and weaving through their attacks. At one point, the monsters even brought dogs with them that looked like some accursed hellhounds. But as Choi fights, he realizes the vastness of the place. Monsters kept appearing, endless waves of them. He understood that he could not win by sheer strength alone. This place was designed to drain him. The Dominator's domain had its own rules. Fight until you win or die. There was no other way. Struggling to gain any advantage, Choi catches sight of a structure in the distance. Driven by both desperation and curiosity, he surges toward it, dodging strikes and evading lunges as he moves. Finally, he reaches the building and forcefully kicks the door open, announcing that he will be borrowing the place, if only for a brief reprieve. Inside, he encounters a monster seemingly engaged in the mundane task of preparing soup. A strange sense of normalcy pervades the room, quite the contrast to the chaos outside. Right, a bit too normal. The creature looks up, and for a moment, Choi considers the possibility that this monster might be more benign, or at least disinterested in fighting. He asks whether the creature has anything decent to eat, mentioning that he has not had a proper meal in days. The monster listens with feigned civility, ladling out the soup with a polite nod. But as Choi approaches, it suddenly hurls the pot of boiling toxic liquid toward him. The noxious fumes spread, filling the air with a deadly venom meant to incapacitate him. However, the toxin is nothing to Choi, who has mastered immunity to poisons. The deadly substance merely strengthens him, feeding his energy reserves. He absorbs the poison as easily as breathing, converting it into raw power that courses through him, amplifying his physical prowess. The monster recoils, eyes widening as it realizes its fatal miscalculation. Before it can react, More monsters from outside have pushed their way into the building, filling the small space with snarling, violent energy. They surge toward him, undeterred by the fate of their fallen kin, eager to subdue the human who has dared to defy them. But Choi is prepared. In a swift motion, he flings the tables and chairs across the room, creating obstacles to slow their approach. The furniture crashes into the advancing monsters, scattering them momentarily, and Choi positions himself to defend against the next wave. Choi had been locked in a relentless battle for hours, transforming a simple chair into a deadly weapon. He had mastered the art of chair fist, a unique martial art born from desperation and necessity. This life-or-death struggle had awakened a new level of awareness within him. Every sense was heightened, every move calculated. Meanwhile, the goddess of balance is still worried about Choi. Even Angel Adakaniel, one of her most diligent servants, is scouring realms in a near-impossible search for him. But it's not like he can find him in the abyss. After a fierce final struggle, Choi stands alone, victorious over every monster that dared challenge him. But as he rested, a thought lingered. How many more battles would he have to fight? His senses, honed to near perfection from his prolonged ordeal, pick up on something unusual emanating from the depths of the restaurant. He feels a powerful aura concentrated in a single spot. Drawn to it, Choi moves toward the source, only to be intercepted by a hand gripping his leg. The restaurant's owner, "Wait, did not this guy die?" Never mind. The owner pleads with him, begging him not to drink from the precious pot that he has worked so hard to obtain. The owner says that the dominator of blood and war does not tolerate dull or uneventful battles. Such monotony is no life for warriors like themselves, who will be forced to fight, die, and be reborn, only to repeat the cycle endlessly if they allow themselves to grow complacent. This pot was something the owner had suffered a lot to find, but Choi is unmoved. In a swift, dismissive motion, he kicks the owner aside, asserting that, in a contest of life and death, the victor claims the prize. With this decisive act, Choi declares both the pot and the entire restaurant his rightful spoils. Today marks the birth of a new era within these walls. The establishment is now his, and he declares it will henceforth be known as the Demon Inn. Yet the original demonic owner is not willing to let go so easily, still groveling for the place he once ruled. Choi, however, makes his stance clear. If the demon wants it back, he will have to fight for it. As Choi surveys his domain, he notes the surprisingly clean state of the kitchen, the one area seemingly untouched by the endless skirmishes. But he finds the pantry sparse, devoid of usable tools or ingredients. Aware that he will have to make do, Choi resigns himself to eating whatever he can find, raw and unaltered. Choi tried eating the meat only to discover it was poisonous. Instead of fear, curiosity took over. Why would a demon poison its own food? He found a strange fruit, and sure enough, it too was poisonous. Frustration grew. Was everything in this darn restaurant toxic? Was this regular food for demons? Choi taps into his complete immunity skill, laughing at the poison. If this is the best that demons can do, then he'll make a feast out of it. And why not? If he's immune to poison, he might as well turn it into a power-up. After all, a little poison never hurts anyone, right? From that day on, Choi settles into a routine that borders on the bizarre. By day, he battles monsters that venture into his inn, testing his strength and honing his chair fist technique. By night, he was experimenting with poisons and ingredients that would look unusable in conventional cooking. And so hundreds of years pass. One day, the old demon owner came back with his army of monsters. They wanted to take back the inn. He acknowledges their persistence, but it does not matter as they cannot defeat him. He warns them while kicking them out that this place is no mere restaurant. It is now the Demon Inn. His years of fighting have tempered him, and suddenly a system prompt appears saying that he has received the A-rank skill, Body and Fist. This strengthens his divine celestial skill and makes his inner strength circulation faster. For a martial artist, the Body and Fist technique is a very powerful skill that makes people dozens of times faster and synergizes the body and mind. Many people want to learn it, but very few can. It is a rare and expensive skill, often found in secret scrolls. Choi learned it through hard work and many fights, although even he does not know the exact requirements he had to fulfill for it. But what he does know is that if people on Earth knew about his skill, they would be very jealous. Of course, that's not happening any sooner than him returning to Earth. Meanwhile, the monster continues to pour in, and unbeknownst to Choi, a dark figure flies through the sky approaching the inn. One regular day, the ground was covered with the bodies of monsters he had defeated. For 100 years he had lived there, fighting and winning against countless creatures. No monster could defeat him. They tried to attack him, but he was too strong. This place was his home, and no one could take it from him. Any attempt to breach his encampment, to lure him out or provoke him, ends only in their own destruction. The monsters were now gathered around Choi's camp, trying to find a way to defeat him. But no matter what they did, they could not break through his defenses. They were frustrated and confused. Choi also felt restless. He was strong, but he felt like he could be even stronger, but just did not know how. Suddenly, the monsters outside the camp start shouting about how they had fresh void beast meat and adamantium. They taunt him as they shout about the treasures lying about, trying to lure him out of his impenetrable fortress. Choi was annoyed, not by the monsters' taunts but by their pathetic attempt at acting. He finally stepped out of his safe place, ready to fight. He knew that staying inside would not help him grow stronger. He wanted to challenge himself and reach his full potential. As Choi exits his sanctuary, the monsters swarm him, but he dispatches them effortlessly, one by one, as he has done countless times before. Yet this time, there was a new monster in the crowd, much larger and looking much more menacing. The monster draws its massive sword, slamming it into the ground with a force that shakes the earth. Choi, undaunted, sidesteps the blade, evading the strike. The monster seethes, unable to accept the prospect of defeat at Choi's hands. In that moment, Choi recalls the words of Shaoan Li, a renowned martial artist and a class hunter, who once described the ultimate stage of martial arts as one where confidence in oneself is absolute. In the past, such confidence had eluded him. His focus had been entirely on cultivating inner strength, on relentless, desperate attacks against his foes. His urgency, his drive, stemmed from an underlying insecurity he could never fully name. But now, standing amid his fallen foes, he realizes he has shed that insecurity. Choi feels at peace, his mind as calm as a still lake. The world around him seems to speak to him, affirming his strength. He moves fluidly, seamlessly evading attacks, his body imbued with the divine strength granted by the celestial technique he has mastered. He no longer relies solely on brute force. Instead, he absorbs and redirects his opponent's strength against them. Through this realization, he attains enlightenment, understanding the full counter technique. It is an insight that transforms him. He silently thanks the demons for their misguided attempts. Apart from the technique, he also obtained the adamantium and the rare meat after all. Choi went back to his safe place, laughing at the monsters. He told them he would only fight when they brought him meat or adamantium. The monsters were confused and angry. They knew they could not beat him in a fight. So the next time they brought the materials, they tried to attack him from far away by bombarding him with powerful magic. A series of explosions shattered the air, flames and shadows intermingling in a fierce assault on his encampment. But as the smoke clears, the demons see Choi's silhouette rising unharmed. He survived the attack and successfully increased his body's durability by a stage due to having blocked the attacks. The more the demons attempt to overwhelm him, the more Choi's power grows, the gap between them widening with each encounter as the years go by. The monsters finally realized they could not defeat Choi. They were tired and hopeless. Choi, feeling a bit playful, let them attack him one by one. He knew he would win, but he also understood their desire to fight. Monsters line up to fight him, and the waiting line is long as hell. The demons are surprisingly docile as Choi promises to fight them all as long as they do not make a commotion. Sigh these muscleheads. One such day when he is thinking about how he has gotten quite close with the demons too, he examines the hunter card given to him by the association long ago. The card, enchanted with magic, displays his current stats, and he marvels at the transformation. Once a mere C+ rank, he now possesses abilities far beyond anything he could have imagined. His rank has not changed, but his skills have evolved. A divine celestial technique, complete poison immunity, body and fist mastery, full counter mastery, invulnerable body, and the legendary 3 flowers convergence. He has achieved the state of heavenly perfection, a resonance with the world itself, granting him an insight that transcends all others. It is this final skill, the resonance from the world, that intrigues him most. It is an ability he has never heard of. His stats have grown incomprehensibly high, and every skill he possesses has ascended beyond anything he'd once imagined. His list of abilities stretches on, each one shining with a rank mastery. But convergence of 3 flowers, now that was something even more profound, more mystical. This technique, rarely seen on Earth, was a martial ability hunters only spoke of in legend. The convergence of 3 flowers marked the pinnacle of Kai cultivation. Hunters used it when their powers were honed to absolute purity, when the quality of their inner strength was refined to an immaculate state. Should this purity falter, the skill would weaken. Yet, if nurtured, if cultivated with dedication, it could elevate a warrior to mythical status, a pinnacle where 3 flowers of Kai, vitality, and spirit bloom as one. Choi remembers tales of great martial artists who'd achieved such a level. Those individuals were known to have mastered unique A-rank techniques like Violet Dawn Divine Technique or the legendary Divine Tai Chi Technique. To reach this pinnacle was to touch the heights of martial skill, yet Choi never intended to seek such perfection. He had wandered through the abyss, his time stretching into an eternity, cultivating a pure form of inner strength without ever realizing its impact. Unknown to him, his body has now become the embodiment of a heavenly martial body, an ideal physique where his affinity for Kai reaches unimaginable depths. While this is often considered an innate gift, a rarity among the rare, Choi now understands that his body has been refined through sheer will, not merely bestowed by fate. Far away, the goddess of balance seethes in her realm, her gaze unable to locate him. She has lost track of Choi in the ever-shifting layers of the abyss, his existence hidden from her omniscience. Choi, however, remains oblivious to her frustration, his focus solely on his own path. His skills have evolved beyond mortal comprehension, and he's now attained what he deems the state of perfection. This level is born of relentless training and countless battles, a state that allows him to observe martial techniques once and master them instantly. Skills that took lifetimes to perfect are his to wield in mere moments, as a mage summons spells. And yet, resonance from the world eludes his understanding. It has no rank, no discernible origin, and no defined limit. Resonance from the universe, as he calls it, feels like a part of something vaster, as though he is approaching a peak of existence. This strange ability implies an alignment with the universe itself, a connection that suggests he is transcending mere humanity. Unaware of the impending consequences, Choi finds himself on the verge of becoming the first human constellation. Choi finished cooking soup and looked at his hunter card. Soon, the Demon Inn was filled with wounded monsters. They were amazed by Choi's strength and respected him. Choi served them food with kindness, not as a conqueror, but as a cook. Yet he told the losers to try his experimental food before leaving. They enjoy the taste of his cooking but vow to grow stronger, determined to face him again. For years, Choi has experimented with recipes, refining his skills as a chef regularly. Although one of the losers is happy that his experimental dish turned out good, another spits it out saying not even a pig would eat it. Obviously, he cannot succeed every time. Just then, a demon throws the food on the ground, complaining that he is there to fight and not eat. But the demon does not even realize what has happened before Choi's warmth extends for a punch from far away and completely obliterates the demon's upper body, killing on the spot. The dumb demon should have just told him if he did not want food. Why did he have to throw and waste it? Thus, the time inside the Demon Inn continues with playful bickering and lots of food. As time passes, he earns a new skill, Abyss low-grade cooking, a C-rank ability. Yet, in contrast, his inner strength feels stifled, blocked by the limitations of his current state. His Dantian, the core of his power, has reached its peak capacity, leaving him unable to increase his strength further. Reflecting on this, he realizes that no one remains stronger than him within the confines of his world. The once insurmountable heights he sought to conquer now seem within his grasp. But this creates an unexpected challenge. With no higher reference to guide him, he faces the daunting task of breaking through this barrier alone. He needs a formidable opponent, someone who can push him beyond his limits. But in this place, he has found only monsters who either fear him or revere him as an unbeatable force. A knock echoes through the inn, interrupting his thoughts. A demon enters, and Choi welcomes him, informing him of the news of high-quality meat brought in that day. Yet, as he turns, the monstrous figure standing at the threshold is unfamiliar. This creature exudes a power that is incomparable to those Choi has encountered before, its aura radiating an intense, almost infinite magic. Choi knew this meeting would be important. The creature's power was immense, even greater than Choi's. This would be a new challenge, a chance to grow stronger. This stranger could be the adversary he has sought. Choi offers meat donburi without the rice to the stranger today. Choi, observing from behind the counter, notices immediately the vast aura that engulfs the beast. It is clear that this creature is not only powerful, but possibly even stronger than him. As the monster finishes its meal, it casually produces a massive ingot of adamantium, a precious metal Choi has only heard of in legends. Its size alone is a marvel, far larger than anything Choi has ever seen, and for a moment, he's taken aback by the sight. Curiosity piqued, Choi offers the monster another bowl, sensing that this being might be more than he initially assumed. Yet, the creature declines. Suddenly, the demon asks Choi if he is human, to which he responds in the affirmative. The demon bows lightly, introducing itself as Varigos, the first family member of the Dominator of Blood and War. With a prideful bearing, Varigos announces that he is a harbinger, one tasked with spreading his master's will, and has come to deliver an invitation for Choi to join their ranks. Varagos speaks of his master with reverence, detailing the significance of being part of the Dominator's family, and conveys how this would elevate Choi in the cosmic hierarchy, allowing him access to unparalleled power and influence. Varagos assumes Choi would be honored, even overjoyed, to accept such an offer. After all, no matter the distances or the world one comes from, a direct invitation from a constellation, a celestial being of nearly limitless power, is a rarity. Refusal, he believes, is unthinkable. Yet, to Varagos's astonishment, Choi declines the proposal with an air of calm resolve. This unexpected rejection rouses a dangerous fury in Varagos, whose pride is shaken by such blatant defiance. The air thickens as his anger manifests, a surge of pressure flooding the inn and challenging Choi. But Choi, undeterred, faces Varagos head-on. He recognizes this confrontation as a long-awaited opportunity, a truly worthy opponent, capable of pushing him further toward his ambitions of strength. In the tense silence, Varagos insists that Choi's potential is precisely what his master seeks, that the Dominator of blood and war thrives on followers who embrace battle and adversity. Yet, he cannot fathom why Choi would refuse. Choi, in response, mentions a prior commitment, a promise made to another constellation, one he is unwilling to break. Varagos grows curious and presses for details, sensing no trace of constellation energy around Choi. Choi admits that although he has not yet joined any family, he awaits a place promised by a constellation with the power to foresee the future, one who has assured him that his path lies with her. Varagos laughed at Choi, calling him a liar. He explained that powerful beings quickly claim mortals with potential, either through contracts or by taking them to their own worlds. Varagos was sure that if Choi was truly special, he would have been taken away already. He could not believe that Choi was still free. Choi refused to believe Varagos. He was confident that his constellation had a plan for him. He told Varagos about his long journey and the many challenges he had faced. Varagos was more confused than skeptical. He said that if Choi was truly special, he would have been taken away by his constellation long ago. Further, if there was really a constellation capable of controlling mana storms as Choi suggested, then they would have already conquered the abyss. He asks if Choi is sure that he simply did not just get caught up and transported there in the magic storm. Before he can speak further, Choi releases a fierce and angry aura, shutting his mouth. Choi began to doubt himself. Maybe his journey was not planned after all. Maybe it was just a terrible accident. But he had never stopped to doubt it for an instant amidst the excitement of growing stronger. He felt sad and tearful as he exited the inn, thinking he should have questioned this long back. But he held back his tears, knowing that even a single tear could weaken him. Choi made up his mind to return to Earth as he had already wasted a lot of years. But Varagos blocked his path. The receiver of the axe of blood, Varagos, finally revealed his true form. He would not let Choi escape his master, the Dominator of blood and war. Varagos was very powerful, and he was ready to fight Choi. He said that even if Choi died, the Dominator would bring him back to life again and again. As they clash, Varagos notices something unusual about Choi's movements. Despite the lack of any visible magic aura, Choi moves with a speed and agility that defy logic, almost as though he's moving faster than the eye can track. Intrigued, Varagos realizes that this must be a result of the celestial footwork technique, a rare skill that infuses physical prowess with divine power, allowing Choi to maneuver in ways that seem impossible for a mere mortal. The sight stirs Varagos's warrior spirit, and he intensifies his attacks, drawing upon his blood baptism technique, an ability that bypasses the need for traditional mana and taps directly into his own vitality and rage. A rain of corrosive liquid that looks like blood. Yet, Choi's invulnerable body technique shields him from the worst of Varagos's attack, but it still will not be enough to put up with the enemy's skill for a long time. Meanwhile, the demon taunts him to finish up soon as his master, the Dominator of blood and war, awaits them. The air trembles under the oppressive weight of the dark red mana pouring down like an acidic torrent, burning, melting, annihilating anything unfortunate enough to encounter it. This ability is a terrifying show of Varagos's overwhelming magic, a force that transcends human understanding, far beyond the capabilities of any mortal magician. Choi's body swells with power, fists radiating an intense aura that seems almost alive, amplifying with each motion. His heightened senses and mastery over the heavenly martial body technique allow him to conserve inner strength with perfect precision. Through three-flower convergence, his every move is sharpened. For Choi, this is unlike any danger he has ever faced. In the face of Varagos's unimaginable power, Choi's mind becomes still. Long gone are the doubts and frustrations that once held him back. The regret over time he thought wasted on misunderstandings. Now he is fully immersed in clarity, akin to the calm he feels in the heart of this mana-infused storm. Speed becomes his most vital asset. He focuses intently on the flow of energy around him, reading every shift. With his heightened perception, he anticipates each drop of the corrosive rain from Varagos's power and evades them with precision. The art of phantom footwork elevates him beyond ordinary movement. He achieves a rank once thought unreachable, an S-rank technique that enables him to traverse space in an instant, allowing him to move to any location he envisions in the blink of an eye. Varagos is stunned. In all his experience, he has never seen a mortal evade his baptism of blood, a magic spell capable of obliterating legions. To him, martial arts had always seemed like the domain of the weak, an antiquated practice inferior to the vast power wielded by true magicians. But Choi's skill forces him to reconsider, a grudging respect rising within him. Varagos contemplates the differences between their abilities, acknowledging that magic users command limitless energy by tapping into the boundless mana of their surroundings. Martial artists, in contrast, draw strength solely from their own bodies. Yet, as he observes Choi, Varagos realizes that martial arts had originated not as a path of weakness, but as a means to defy the natural order. He recalls an ancient tale he once heard, a legend from the realm of the constellations. Long ago, in a distant land under a powerful constellation's rule, a group of enslaved individuals incited an uprising, challenging the very laws governing their world. The uprising persisted, fueled by a strange new discipline that did not rely on borrowed power. This technique, this act of defiance, was martial arts, a way of drawing strength from within. If Choi had been a mage, Varagos says, he would already have fallen, his body dissolved by the bloody tide of Varagos's baptism of blood. But Choi's will to resist fuels him, and he advances, fist raised in defiance. Choi's punch lands on Varagos with all the force he can muster, yet the impact is disappointingly ineffective. Varagos smiles darkly, almost mocking, and declares that he has been blessed by the powers of blood. His body surges with newfound energy, and he swings his axe onto the earth that reverberates through the battlefield like a shockwave. The air crackles with pressure, and each magical wave brings Varagos closer to his peak. In Choi, he has found an opponent worthy of his fullest power. Choi fought hard against Varagos, using his amazing speed and power from phantom footwork. But Varagos was protected by a powerful magic shield. He knows he must reach a new level of power to have any chance of victory. Drawing upon his inner strength, he begins to channel his energy, gathering it within himself. This concentrated energy, known as fist ki, is the product of intense focus, a manifestation of Choi's martial essence. But fist ki alone is insufficient. Its limitations have long been evident. However, there exists a way to transcend this boundary, a technique so demanding that only one other martial artist, Xiaowan Li, had managed it centuries ago, even if only for a fleeting moment. This legendary technique, the Ki fortification method, demands an unparalleled reserve of inner strength. It compresses fist ki to a density beyond normal limits, transforming it into a nearly impenetrable force. The sheer power required for this technique makes it almost impractical for most fighters. But Choi has already reached a level far beyond Xiaowan Li's. Summoning every ounce of his energy, he channels it into his fists. Choi gathered all his strength, his body glowing with a fierce energy. With a thunderous step, he launched himself at Varagos, his fist a weapon of pure power. The impact was earth-shattering, and Varagos's magical shield cracked and shattered under the force of Choi's attack. The once seemingly invincible shield of blood magic has finally been destroyed. Likewise, Varagos's master's blessing, the powerful aura that has safeguarded him through countless battles, splinters into fragments. Yet Varagos cannot accept what he sees. Choi, however, knows he is treading dangerous ground. Each of his techniques depletes his inner strength at an unforgiving rate. Yet the battle rages on, with no respite and no forgiveness. A brilliant light, blinding in its purity, fills the vast, dark arena as Choi and Varagos clash. Above, monstrous creatures gather to observe, whispering in awe among themselves. It has been nearly half a year since the conflict began, and still, neither warrior submits. To the audience, Choi's endurance is the stuff of legend. Yet Choi is far from invincible. Gritting his teeth, he channels his inner reserves, pouring his remaining ki into his next attack, a celestial punch imbued with his fist aura. Power surges through him, burning like fire, consuming his energy at an accelerated pace that would drain any ordinary warrior in an instant. In response, he activates the Three Flowers Convergence, a mastery that allows him to draw ki at a rate fast enough to keep pace with his body's demand. Alongside this, his heavenly martial body works in tandem, slowing the consumption, sustaining him even as he feels the limits of his endurance stretched thin. Varagos watches with a darkened gaze, his sneer unmistakable as he senses Choi's efforts. To Varagos, this protracted struggle is nothing more than an inconvenience, a game dragged on too long by a mere mortal. He decides in this moment that the time has come to end this futile exchange. He will crush Choi, erase him entirely, and lay waste to every spark of defiance that dares to rise against him. Varagos calls upon his master's gift, summoning a dark, unholy power that has long lain dormant within him. Flames erupt around him, burning with an intense heat. His strength multiplies infinitely, transforming him into a vessel of pure destruction. His once massive figure shifts, condensing into a compact, swift form that grants him agility, unlike any he has wielded before. Now, with this amplified strength and newfound speed, Varagos moves with an otherworldly swiftness, darting around Choi in blinding arcs, his figure a dark streak against the dim backdrop of the abyss. For Choi, survival becomes an impossible test of endurance. The once impenetrable protection of Choi's body begins to crack under Varagos's relentless onslaught. He feels the familiar weight of Kai depletion, his body teetering on the brink of emptiness. Yet he cannot afford to lose focus, as that would mean death. Knowing that time and energy are slipping away, Choi finds himself faced with a desperate decision. His only choice is to push forward, to sacrifice every last reserve if necessary, to bring this battle to an irrevocable end. From the moment he had entered the abyss, he had never once emptied his inner strength completely. That would be practically suicide for a human here. But with not much choice left, he uses all his remaining inner strength to deliver a punch. Surprisingly, this awakens within himself a new ability, Celestial String, an enhancement that weaves divine energy into his techniques, elevating his combat prowess to unparalleled heights. His divine celestial technique begins to evolve in real time, each strike now pulsing with newfound energy and razor-sharp precision. As Choi's aura expands, Varagos senses a transformation. The thought of this mortal rival ascending, of Choi becoming a new constellation within the abyss, strikes Varagos with a horror he has never known. He cannot allow it. In his master's domain, in this territory he has claimed as his own, the rise of a challenger is an abomination. He watches with mounting fury as Choi's form begins to expand, growing colossal, his presence towering over the abyss like the dawn of some new, unholy god. The restraints that have bound Choi's spirit dissolve, leaving behind only a raw, boundless power. Choi is no longer simply a warrior in the throes of survival. He has become something greater, something transcendent, his inner strength now resonating with the immensity of the cosmos. Within his dantian, a universe of energy pulses, an endless reservoir of power waiting to be unleashed. He has ascended beyond mortal understanding, reaching a rank of strength that defies description. The technique that fortifies his ki achieves an S rank, elevating him to a level of might previously inconceivable. Along with this, he gains an unparalleled ability, subduing the strong and assisting the weak. Choi's celestial fist comes crashing down one final time, obliterating the last vestiges of Varagos's defenses. The Dominator's body, once a vessel of terror, shatters under the impact. The universe, vast and unending, awaits his next command, his next step. Choi stands amidst the aftermath of his battle with Varagos, realizing with a deepening awareness that countless constellations across the universe are watching him. The constellations, each express their interest in their own ways. The cat of lava and magma acknowledges him with a casual wave of its paw. The cardinal of plague and darkness extends an offer of a weapon, a sickle. Pose. Even the bull who stomps at the world bellows its approval. Yet none captures Choi's attention as much as the dominator of blood and war, who looks upon him with anger. The system notifies that he has won the battle and gained power from the universe due to the effects of his self-conquered title. Varagos, despite his own impressive prowess and the bloodshed he conjures, concedes his defeat. With dignity, he acknowledges Choi's potential. He encourages him to grow beyond these small victories, urging him to push his power so far that even the constellations themselves would find it impossible to look down upon him. Varagos speaks with conviction, planting the seed of an idea in Choi's mind, to one day etch his own name among the stars, to become a constellation himself. Choi, stunned by the enormity of such an idea, tries to dismiss it. Yet he cannot fully ignore it, for Varagos, a being of vast power, sees something within him, something worthy of such aspirations. As Varagos fades from the scene, promising to meet him again for another contest, Choi feels a stirring within, an unfamiliar pressure building as he contemplates the stares of the watching constellations. He attains a new level of understanding, reaching what he knows to be a zenith, a peak state of being in which he begins to grasp the depth of power that flows from self-mastery. The constellation's gazes bear down upon him, weighty and intense, like 1,000 spears challenging his resolve. Yet Choi feels the temptation they bring. The cat of lava and magma proposes a meeting, and the cardinal of plague and darkness does the same. Yet, for all their invitations, Choi understands that constellations like these rarely move from their thrones. They must be cautious, for in the abyss, competition is fierce. If one constellation loosens its grip over its domain, other ambitious entities would seize it, toppling kingdoms in a single ruthless stroke. Choi begins to understand that the constellations watch him as they would an arena match, their interest akin to spectators of a universal game. They remain distant, yet fully aware, waiting for him to slip, to falter, so they might consume the remnants of his strength for themselves. The dominator of blood and war soon reveals his true intent, placing a bounty on Choi's head. Choi faces a relentless barrage of monsters and demons that rise against him, drawn by the bounty and by their own hunger for strength. He has always fought to carve his own path, not to serve the whims of greater beings. He knows that aligning himself with a constellation would only subjugate him, trapping him within their unbreakable bonds. Every moment he's reminded of Varigos's words, urging him to surpass even the highest powers of the abyss, to craft a legend that would echo through eternity. Among the crowd of constellations, each offers him something in exchange for his allegiance. The Cardinal of Plague and Darkness tries to entice him with the ability to unleash plagues, a gift as formidable as it is dangerous. But Choi refuses, aware of the chains hidden within the gift, sparking laughter from the other constellations who mock the Cardinal's desperate offer. The Cardinal, bristling with frustration, seethes at the rejection, a response that only amuses the rest of the constellations further. The cat of lava and magma, undeterred by Choi's dismissal of the plague skill, instead offers him a book, a tome of magic, rich with ancient spells and secret knowledge, the fabled Cat's Book. But Choi, resolute in his path, declines the gift, declaring that he will rely on martial arts alone. The cat, mildly disappointed but not entirely surprised, then tries another approach. It presents him with a piece of adamantium, a rare metal, gleaming with an otherworldly light. The offer is tempting, a material that could bolster his defenses to near invulnerability. This time, Choi accepts, but only on his terms. He will use the metal not as a symbol of submission, but as a tool to forge his own destiny. He is no one's subject, no one's pet project. The cat, seemingly pleased yet subtly exasperated, advises him to consider forming a contract if he wishes for even greater resources. But Choi's voice rings out defiantly, rejecting the notion of submitting himself to any celestial entity. No way in hell is he going to become a lackey after coming such a long way. And for the cat, this hipster remains a hipster. Choi finds himself gazing one last time upon the constellation of the cat of lava and magma. A peculiar sense of finality lingers in the air as he prepares to leave. He wonders where the hell the cat learned words like those. Choi walks back and arrives at the Demon Inn, yet now it is unrecognizable. The inn is in ruins, walls crumbling and shadows thick with desolation. Amid the wreckage of the inn, he searches for a lost piece of adamantium, a part of his past that perhaps does not hold the meaning it once did. He's indifferent now, ignoring the silent taunts from distant stars and the playful remarks of the constellations watching him. He leaves the inn behind, stepping away from all that has once been familiar. Meanwhile, the angel, Adicaniel, wanders in the abyss. Adicaniel's surroundings are bluish and filled with plateau-like flat surfaces that form the ground here. A two-headed leopard-like creature turns its head on being called as Adicaniel asks if they have seen Choi showing them a hologram of him, and even telling them that a constellation is looking for him. However, the creature is not cooperative but hostile and attempts to confront the angel. But this is useless because Adicaniel's power is overwhelming, his punch throwing the monster aside effortlessly. The monster is daunted by his might. In a rare moment, the angel's voice, resonant and cold, questions the others surrounding them, if they've seen Choi. Even here, the creature's envy and grudges are apparent, and the two-headed creature who got beaten tries to desperately apologize. With a sigh, the angel leaves and the search for Choi continues. Elsewhere, another watcher takes note of the events unfolding. The observer with 100 faces, a constellation of profound perception, ponders Choi's actions from afar. The Demon King of Lambs, intrigued by the unfolding journey, promises a reward for any news of Choi's movements, adding yet another layer of intrigue to the search. The Master of Twisted Hallucinations scoffs, suspecting some hidden motive behind the goddess's actions. As in the mortal world, constellations have their rivalries and ambitions, each curious as to why this angel has ventured beyond its bounds. What secrets might lie in a mere servant's path? The constellations, bound by their cosmic territories, seldom roam freely, limited by the divine constraints that tether them to specific domains. For one like Adekaniel to wander, to seek across boundaries, is an act rarely seen. And like mortals giving donations to streamers, the constellations too can gift their powers to those who catch their interest. Adekaniel, realizing the prying eyes upon him, activates the barrier of the Kots, an arcane skill that shields him from the relentless gaze of the constellations. The observer with 100 faces, watching from a distance, frowns at the sight of the barrier, his frustration apparent. The master of twisted hallucinations too scoffs, bemused by the goddess's cunning in orchestrating such a spectacle. The demon king of devious flames, in a bold offer, promises the skill of hellfire in exchange for the barrier to be lowered, seeking a glimpse of what lies within. Yet Adekaniel remains resolute, undeterred by their pleas or bribes. Meanwhile, Choi is still in the Forsaken Land within the Dominator of Blood and War's domain. He raises his fist, striking the empty air while training. Choi had mastered the divine celestial technique. He was no longer human. He was a godlike being. Every move he made was perfect, every strike powerful. He was one with the world, his power flowing through everything around him. Yet he continues using the celestial punch just like when he first started training. With a final punch, a system prompt notifies that he has chosen a life befitting of his status as his existential power increases. When he slayed Varigos and decided to leave the Dominator's domain, he had seen a large change to the unknown skill called resonance from the world. He had reached the peak of his presence, and the world was resonating in response. This is what earned him the title of the undefeated avatar of training, embodying the art of self-perfection, ever pushing the boundaries of his form. But how is he supposed to grow stronger and become a constellation now? As Choi contemplates his path, monsters approach, guardians of this dominion. They mock him, belittling his intrusion as an affront to the Dominator's authority, taunting him with memories of past encounters. Yet within him, the realization dawns that his path to constellationhood lies in honing his essence, deepening his existential power. To exist as a constellation, he must embody the ideals he seeks, his presence growing until it is large enough. He faces the monsters with renewed purpose, dispatching them with grace and precision, even wielding one hand at times as if their attacks are but an afterthought. As years pass, he trains tirelessly in the abyss, a place untouched by the constellation's light. His power grows, not only through his inner strength, but through skills born from his confrontations. He gains new abilities, subdue the strong and assist the weak, and self-conqueror, titles that embody his strength. His power of presence swells, an aura that commands and influences. The skill of self-conqueror resonates, showing others the path of inner mastery, a rule unto itself. If constellations would start following contradictions, where a cardinal of plague and darkness would wield healing magic, and a dominator of blood and war would speak of peace, their power would weaken, and so will celestial standing, for their influence is shaped by the ideals they embody. Choi understands this implicitly. To wield self-conqueror, he must face an opponent stronger than himself, yet he must never falter, for his worth as a self-conqueror lies in his unwavering resolve. Suddenly the ground breaks open, revealing a colossal figure emerging from the darkness. Onyx, the stone serpent. Choi stares, memories stirring of a time when Onyx had been a loyal companion. The serpent's stone-scaled body looms massive and imposing, a being of ancient power that has come seeking him once more. The sight of Onyx rekindles a spark of memory. An old friend is back. Choi steps forward, arms wide as he welcomes Onyx, his old companion. But his friend's response is cryptic, unsettling. Choi's gaze travels down, taking in the sight of other serpents clustered around Onyx, other stone beasts similar to him, but bearing none of the warmth that Onyx once held. They seem menacing, their eyes gleaming with a cold, unyielding threat. Onyx's silent alarm reaches Choi even without words. The stone serpents have gathered with a purpose, and it is clear they are here not as friends, but as hunters. Choi realizes that he is the prey. Suddenly, Choi felt a terrifying presence rising from the earth. It was a creature so huge and powerful that it made everything else seem small. Choi knew this creature's magic was so strong it filled the air with a chilling energy. He was facing his greatest challenge yet, the Hydra, a gargantuan serpent bearing 9 heads. Choi has attracted the attention of constellations before, beings who watched and judged his every move. Some cheered him on, admiring his unyielding strength, while others sought his downfall, seeing in him a potential rival who, if left unchecked, could disrupt their celestial hierarchy. Among his most relentless adversaries is the Dominator of Blood and War, a being who despises Choi for having vanquished a servant in his own domain, an unforgivable affront in the eyes of a constellation. The Dominator and other powerful beings saw Choi as a threat. They wanted to stop him from becoming too powerful. So Choi went to the Abyss, a place where powerful creatures lived free from the control of the constellations. The Hydra, the ruler of his own domain in the Abyss, was one of the most powerful beings there. It had immense power, but it was wild and uncontrolled. Within Choi, skills ignite in response to the threat. His abilities to subdue the strong and empower the weak surge to life, resonating with the energy of his surroundings. He feels his power growing, drawn to the challenge before him. He recognizes that this fight will test him, push him beyond his limits, but his spirit rises to the challenge. The aura of the undefeated avatar of training surrounds him, solidifying his resolve. Onyx's warning lingers in his mind, cautioning him against the imminent danger. Yet Choi's spirit, shaped by relentless battles and hardened by endless training, drives him forward. The Hydra seethes with rage, perceiving Choi as a defiler of its domain, an interloper who dared to meddle in matters beyond his grasp. Each of its 9 heads is alive with a malice so intense it could bring lesser beings to their knees. Poison drips from its fangs, potent enough to incapacitate even the constellations. Its breath alone is a death sentence, capable of reducing anything to ashes. Yet Choi remains undeterred, standing firm against the Hydra's seething aura. His past battles in the Dominator's territory have steeled him against such overwhelming killing intent. He has faced warriors with the same chilling gaze, felt the bloodthirst of his opponents clawing at his mind. The Hydra lunges, its jaws snapping down with a force that reverberates through the ground. In one swift movement, Choi slices through one of its heads, the force of his attack leaving a trail of power in its wake. But the Hydra is not so easily vanquished. Its severed head regenerates, emerging anew. The Hydra regards him with a grudging respect, acknowledging his strength yet proclaiming that he will pay dearly for his transgression. The air is thick with the Hydra's venomous aura, each of its movements echoing the endless wrath of a being that has crushed countless heroes before him. The poison in the air is potent, a lethal fog that would kill most opponents upon contact. But Choi endures, fortified by an immunity that shields him from its fatal effects. Yet the Hydra's presence is unlike anything he has ever faced, a constant barrage of power that seems to increase with each moment. The battle takes on a surreal quality as Choi's existential power swells, resonating with the energies of the Abyss, feeding off the Hydra's fury and amplifying his resolve. The Hydra attacked Choi's mind, trying to break his spirit. It taunted him, saying it was the strongest creature in the Abyss. But Choi resisted the Hydra's mental attack, determined to stay focused. The Hydra lunges again, its head striking with relentless fury, each one bloating up with poison that clouds the entire area. However, when the Hydra thinks that it has defeated Choi, he jumps up through the cloud of poison unharmed. The Hydra's poison is nothing before his immunity, and though his body strains under the force of the Hydra's blows, he endures, his power rising in response to each strike. In the midst of this brutal clash, Choi senses a shift within himself. His battle with the Hydra awakens something deeper. He feels the Hydra's power falter, its once overwhelming force dwindling as his own existential power surges, consuming the Hydra's strength and transforming it into his own. Choi fought the Hydra, cutting off its heads one by one. It would be fair even to call it a one-sided beating. But the Hydra kept regenerating, growing stronger with each attack. Choi realized he needed a new strategy. He could not just keep fighting the same way. He had to find a way to stop the Hydra's regeneration. The Hydra heaves a noxious breath into the air, a cloud of toxic fumes swirling around it. Choi feels the heat and lethality of the fumes even with his invulnerable body skill. Although he trusts in this skill to shield him, he knows its limits. The Hydra's breath surpasses mere physical damage. It is imbued with dark magic, a volatile energy akin to that of Varigos, a powerful magic entity. Yet, Choi knows this creature transcends even Varigos, and his usual defenses might not hold if he is caught within its poison's full force. Undeterred, Choi activates Celestial Footwork, an advanced skill that enhances his speed. He moves deftly between the bursts of poison. He pushes himself harder, seeking an elusive swiftness that might give him the advantage he needs to exploit any brief openings in the Hydra's assault. As he strives to reach an even greater speed, he notices something strange. The frequency and pace of the Hydra's breaths are slowing. It feels as though time itself is bending to Choi's will, allowing him to anticipate and evade the poison clouds with uncanny precision. This phenomenon cannot be explained by Choi's martial arts alone, nor by any of his magical skills. His newfound agility defies reason, surpassing his previous limitations. Realization dawns on him that he has tapped into an existential power, a force beyond physical abilities or acquired skills. It is a manifestation of his very being, allowing him to alter reality, to make time itself bend and fluctuate in accordance with his desires. With every movement, every strike, this power flows through him, aligning the world to his will. Driven by this awakening, Choi launches himself toward the Hydra, severing its heads with precision and decisiveness. The Hydra regenerates, its heads reappearing, more furious and tenacious with each resurgence. Choi understands now that this existential power is what grants the constellations their dominion over the abyss. Those beings, ancient and transcendent, use this same force to carve kingdoms from the abyss's chaos, bestowing blessings and powers upon those they choose. It is a power rooted in the core of one's existence, bound only by the wielder's will and strength. With enough existential force, a constellation can reshape reality itself, much as Choi does now in battle. He channels every ounce of this power into his attacks, transcending his limitations to match and overwhelm the Hydra's relentless regeneration. Yet, the Hydra's soul is formidable, an enormous presence backed by an indomitable will. Choi's existential power may alter reality, but it cannot yet bend the Hydra's will to submission. The creature's hatred is palpable, its fury only intensifying as it watches its heads being severed time and again. It snarls, vowing vengeance with each regeneration. However, Choi has no desire to control the Hydra. Instead, he turns his existential power inward, focusing it upon himself. His fortified ki, infused with this existential energy, transforms his weapon into a blade capable of piercing the Hydra's scales, striking deep enough to halt its ability to heal. He forces himself to remain calm, a critical element of his training. In this battle, losing focus could be fatal. Steadfastly, he cuts deeper into the Hydra's flesh, exploiting his newfound power to target the root of its regenerative abilities. For the first time, he notices that the Hydra's wounds are not healing as swiftly. His attacks have found a vulnerability within its seemingly invincible body. The Hydra realizes this as well, the pain and horror of its predicament evident in its frantic eyes. It roars, recoiling, and makes a desperate attempt to flee, its once unstoppable regeneration slowing to a near halt. Its 9 heads argue amongst themselves. Some heads insist on standing their ground, unwilling to bear the humiliation of retreat. Yet others, sensing the severity of Choi's newfound strength, argue that survival must come first. Never in their countless years of existence has the Hydra faced such an unyielding foe. Pride clashes with self-preservation, but the creature's instincts push it toward survival, knowing that one misstep against Choi could mean its end. Choi seizes this moment, his foot striking with renewed ferocity. One by one, the heads fall, severed with such precision and force that they cannot regenerate. His existential power surges in response to his accomplishment, as if resonating with the universe itself. Onyx, his companion, and others who witness this battle stand in stunned silence. The blood, imbued with a fraction of the Hydra's own essence, flows into Choi, merging with his own life force and granting him an A+ skill in undying regeneration. Choi stands amidst the remains of a battle, his gaze fixed on the slain Hydra before him. He remembers a time when he'd scoff at such abilities of regeneration and such, dismissing them as unnecessary for a martial artist. Yet here he stands, his hunter cards filled with all manner of extraordinary skills, proof of how far he's transcended his past life as a hunter. Those cards now mean little. He has surpassed the life of a mortal, pursuing instead the path of a constellation, an entity of legend and mystery. Nearby, the stone serpent Onyx and his family call out to him, though Onyx seems hesitant, as if unsure of who he's become. It has been thousands of years since they last met. Choi observes Onyx with equal amazement, noticing the subtle yet undeniable changes. Onyx, too, has grown, surrounded now by his own kin. Choi smiles, feeling both pride and a strange nostalgia. He notices the corpse of the Hydra, a prize beyond value, and he asks if Onyx would like any part of it. Meat, leather, bones, anything that might be useful. Onyx hesitates, concerned about the Hydra's toxic body. The very air around the corpse is thick with poisonous fumes, making even approaching it a perilous task. But Choi, undeterred, begins cutting through the Hydra's flesh, segment by segment, heedless of the danger. Onyx, with a shiver of respect and unease, instructs the younger serpents to avert their eyes from the grisly sight. The spectacle leaves them in awe. Choi carves through the Hydra with high precision. Once Choi finishes, he realizes the Hydra's body is far too vast to carry. He thus decides to consume as much of it as he can here. Seeing his predicament, Onyx steps forward and hands Choi a necklace, an artifact imbued with unique power. As the system notifies, it is an invaluable dimensional pocket. This artifact, a gift from Onyx and his family for saving them, has the capacity to hold the Hydra's massive corpse. Grateful, Choi accepts it, astonished at the thought of how many treasures he can now carry within it. He begins filling the pocket with the Hydra's rare bones, its robust leather, and potent minerals, understanding their potential for crafting legendary items. His mind races with possibilities. He could forge weapons or armor of unrivaled durability with the Hydra's materials, perhaps even create culinary tools to aid his passion for cooking. He recalls a piece of adamantium he's gathered previously, a metal of unparalleled hardness. Combined with the orichalcum that Onyx gifts him, an equally rare metal exuding pure magic, Choi envisions crafting specialized utensils, an adamantium frying pan and cutting board, a set of orichalcum knives. The thought of using such divine tools exhilarates him. Choi felt a change within himself. He could now understand the language of the universe, sensing the power flowing around him. He realized that his strength came not just from his own power, but from the power of the universe itself. With every follower he gained, his power grew stronger. He felt invincible, a god among mortals. Onyx watches Choi and tries to explain to his doubtful children that although Choi looks kinda cuckoo, he is a good person. Meanwhile, Choi finds there's still much Hydra meat left, too much to take in the pocket's limited capacity. Rather than leave it behind, Choi decides to cook and consume it here. He recalls his years managing the Demon Inn, where his culinary skill reached an exalted level, and he eagerly accepts the challenge of preparing the Hydra meat. Handling the Hydra is no ordinary task. This creature refused the path of a constellation, an ancient entity that thrived in the abyss, and its body holds as much venom as power. Unprocessed, it would poison anyone who dared consume it. Yet Choi relishes the challenge, skillfully cleansing the meat of its toxins and carefully slicing it with his improvised orichalcum tools. Choi offered some meat to Onyx, the stone serpent. Onyx was hesitant at first, but Choi encouraged him to try. Onyx was amazed by the taste of the meat. It was delicious and full of energy. The other serpents also tried the meat and loved it. They were surprised that it was not poisonous. They realized Choi was a master of food and a powerful warrior. Choi was happy to see the serpents enjoying the food. He would never harm his friends. The serpents were grateful to Choi. They saw him as a hero and a leader. They were loyal to him. Choi felt a surge of power, a connection to the universe. In this moment, Choi understands why constellations covet followers so fiercely. Every follower enhances his existential power, weaving their strength into his own. The serpent's devotion strengthens his resolve and sharpens his understanding of the universe's power dynamics. He realizes why so many constellations focus their gaze on Earth. The planet, with its billions of souls, represents a boundless reservoir of faith and existential power. Any constellation that could claim Earth would wield influence enough to sway the tides of the abyss itself. With this realization, Choi feels an urgency rise within him. He knows he must find a way back to Earth before the prophecy of the goddesses is fulfilled. In a quiet, dimly lit space, Choi sits alone, reflecting on his journey and the path that lies ahead. His solitude is soon interrupted as Onyx, his stone serpent companion, appears before him. Observing Onyx closely, Choi notices an unusual sight. The serpent's normally lean, muscular body seems to have bloated. A flicker of concern crosses his mind as he wonders if Onyx has consumed something harmful. He recalls common warnings about foods deadly to animals, like chocolate for dogs or green onions for cats. The thought lingers. Could Hydra meat have an adverse effect on creatures like Onyx? He muses that, while Onyx has always devoured anything offered with eager abandon, certain foods might still be beyond his capacity to safely digest. Onyx, however, dismisses these worries with unyielding confidence, asserting that no substance can truly harm him. For Onyx, all things are edible, each taste bringing some unique experience or benefit. Choi admires his companion's resilience, but recognizes that his own journey cannot be delayed here. His goal of becoming a constellation, a being of celestial renown, is not something he can afford to compromise. This sense of purpose, the unwavering consistency within him, he knows is what the goddess recognized when she first chose him. As they move forward, Onyx leads Choi into another realm, the air tinged with subtle, magical waves, an eerie pulsing of energy surrounding them. Onyx, in a rare moment of caution, begins etching symbols onto the ground. The shapes gradually reveal a creature's outline, one that stirs memories of demons Choi has encountered. Onyx tries to convey a warning, though his fragmented instinctual language makes it difficult for Choi to decipher. The creature Onyx depicts appears dangerous. Especially its face is a warning that it should not be underestimated. Choi's experience battling demons has left him weary of the supernatural, and he wonders what new monstrosity could await him here. He's tired of demons, having fought countless battles in blood-stained realms before, but if another foe is indeed lurking, he resolves to be ready. With a leap, he goes through the portal and lands on a flat floor. The skill he calls Subdue the Strong and Assist the Weak seems to gain new layers, sharpening as he senses the challenge before him. With his power heightened, Choi feels a rush of excitement. Servants of the constellation approach him, curious and reverent. They recognize him as the undefeated avatar of training, paying respects that are both earnest and cautious. They had been expecting him, an exalted visitor who might someday attain constellated status. Choi feels a flicker of pride, but he is aware of the latent dangers that underlie such attention. The servants speak of their master's wish to meet him, their tones both differential and foreboding. One servant, a nightmare incubus, tries to cast an enchantment, weaving a spell that would normally ensnare weaker beings. Choi feels the spell attempting to penetrate his defenses, but the divine technique he's honed shields him. He senses that the servants are not malicious. They merely lack control over their powers. The incubus acknowledges Choi's resilience, humbling herself by calling him Great Constellation. For a moment, he allows himself to be softened by their kind words. Such kindness, rare in the abyss, warms him in a way he had not anticipated. But he remains cautious and asks the servant if she's ever heard of Earth. She appears startled, mentioning that she has only heard rumors of it being a realm teeming with countless souls, a treasure of power if any constellation could control it. Choi dismisses her assumption that he seeks Earth for domination. He harbors no intention of enslaving his home. He desires only to protect it, a motivation that, here in this realm, feels dangerously idealistic. As they press deeper into the territory, Choi notices a shift in the servants' demeanor. Despite their nightmare nature, they are innocent and earnest in their admiration. They are not inherently evil. Suddenly, there was a commotion. A creature was screaming, desperate for power. The other servants were trying to calm it down, warning it about the consequences of its actions. Choi was interested. He saw a bit of himself in the creature, its endless hunger for power. Choi was curious about the creature's problem. His companion explained that nightmares needed to feed on the desires of others to survive. Choi, who only cared about training, did not understand. His desire was simple and pure, unlike the complex desires of the nightmare. The nightmare also desired to consume Choi's unique desire, but assured him that she can control herself. At last, they reach an imposing gate, adorned with ancient symbols and radiating a formidable energy. The servant pauses, her voice trembling slightly as she admits that she has no authority to proceed beyond this point. But Choi decides to bring her along, sensing that her presence may provide a subtle advantage should he face the unknown within. She is visibly touched, her gratitude palpable as they cross the threshold together. This is the first time anyone has offered to include her in something greater. However, as they enter the room, Choi is blinded by the pink and yellowish light coming from within. However, the servant who guided him here is lying flat on the ground, sound asleep. What greets him is a young girl who is none other than the constellation of dreams and greed herself. Her ethereal voice speaks softly yet clearly, whispering that Choi has been the cause of recent disturbances rippling through the entire abyss. The voice confesses a long-held desire to finally meet him. Confused, Choi refutes this, stating he is not a constellation, not yet. He feels far removed from such a position. As he speaks, she approaches, seemingly innocent, yet with a knowing expression that belies her youthful appearance. Behind her, the servant who had accompanied him to the hollow room lies unconscious, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk within this surreal realm. The girl insists that once a path is chosen, even the faintest step toward becoming a constellation is enough to mark one as such. She explains that it is not the title itself, but the very act of walking this path that defines one as a constellation. Choi, turning this over in his mind, is struck by her insight. The girl remarks that actions undertaken along the constellation's path are, by nature, those of a constellation. To further validate her point, she tells him that he can use existential power just like other constellations. Choi wonders if she is, in fact, the master of nightmares, a being whose aura is more unsettling than her innocent appearance suggests. As Choi replays his steps back to his arrival in the hollow room, his mind wrestles with thoughts and sensations that seem to echo across time and space. He recalls laying down in a vast, blank expanse, where the tension and timelessness weighed upon him. It was here that he had refined his celestial techniques, reaching the pinnacle of martial skill. Yet, he cannot shake the question now haunting him. Does he truly wish to become a constellation, or should he simply embrace the peace he has gained through enlightenment? His thoughts grow more intense, swirling with desires and ambitions that beckon him to indulge in a future that seems within reach. He realizes he stands in a territory governed by dreams and greed, a place where aspirations manifest in tantalizing visions. The constellation of dreams and greed explains that everyone who enters the hollow room is overtaken by an overwhelming satisfaction in fulfilling desires until they reach a calmness that seems impossible to resist. But such peace is only attainable by constellations. For mortals or those who are only beginning their cosmic journey, to yield to these temptations is nearly inescapable. The girl, the master of nightmares, observes him intently and tells him he has not yet fully awakened to his potential. This revelation shocks Choi. With curiosity, he inquires if she has an agenda in mind. She proposes an alliance, a notion that leaves him baffled. Never did he expect such an invitation. Constellations, in his understanding, are creatures bound by their own selfish nature, entities who transcend mortal concerns and keep their interests close. The girl acknowledges the truth of his view. Constellations are selfish, but they are also bound by choices they cannot easily escape. She explains that selfishness, paradoxically, can sometimes foster alliances. These alliances are not born out of camaraderie, but rather out of mutual advantage. Choi begins to see her logic. Such alliances provide the constellation with a measure of security, a shield against the relentless cosmic power struggles. She elaborates, explaining that constellations are often misunderstood by mortals who romanticize them as gods. In reality, the life of a constellation is fraught with danger. A nascent constellation reveals its presence, even slightly, and older, stronger constellations may strike immediately. In a realm where the strong thrive at the expense of the weak, alliances become a vital strategy for survival. Not every constellation, she explains, holds a belief in this cruel philosophy of survival of the fittest. Many seek to avoid the ruin brought by the power-hungry beings who care only for dominance. In the shadows cast by this power struggle, there remains a place for desires both subtle and grand, for dreams that possess depth. The master of nightmares requires the nourishment of such desires to fuel her existence. She cannot thrive on simple desires born from fear or longing for lost things. Instead, she needs desires inspired by the changing world, desires that provoke exploration, discovery, and achievement. This need, she admits, binds her within the boundaries of her kingdom. Like all constellations, she is restricted, unable to venture beyond her domain without risking the slow drain of her existential strength. She explains to Choi that the existence of a constellation is parasitic in nature, not as glamorous as mortals might imagine. Though she appears childlike, her needs and limitations are those of an ancient being, a reminder of how dependent constellations are on the desires that flow through their territories. As Choi listens, he recognizes her vulnerability. It strikes him that she has shared much with him, almost recklessly, exposing the frailty at the core of her existence. Aware of her weakness, he wonders if she is not afraid that he might exploit this knowledge. Her response is quiet, but confident. She has chosen to approach him precisely because of what she perceives in him, a constellation whose desires lack the lust for conquest. She can sense his aspirations, his intense but pure drive for improvement, for mastery of his craft. She knows of his daily training regimen, his relentless pursuit of celestial techniques, not for power, but for the satisfaction of pushing his limits. The master of nightmares sees in him an endless well of determination, one that poses no direct threat to her or her kingdom. Unlike others, he craves not dominion but perfection in his martial arts, a drive that might sustain him without veering into selfish ambition. She perceives, too, his peculiar passion for cooking, an unusual fixation for a constellation, but one that embodies his dedication to skill and creativity. This realization partially convinces Choi that she is genuine, though questions continue to linger in his mind. As he contemplates, Choi voices a concern about what responsibilities this alliance might impose upon him. He has other pursuits, and he wonders if he could truly be of use to her. The girl, unperturbed, laughs, amused by the thoughtfulness of his inquiry. Few constellations, she remarks, would even consider obligations before considering benefits. She assures him that unless they are under direct attack, he would be free of responsibilities. Constellations, after all, rarely act unless it benefits them, and she sees no need to burden him with unnecessary obligations. After a pause, Choi agrees to the alliance, sensing it might be a path that brings him closer to his own goals and perhaps even back to Earth. This arrangement provides him with a semblance of community, even if built upon strategic self-interest rather than true companionship. He is granted a skill associated with the alliance of lesser constellations, a gift that binds him in loyalty but also grants him power. A constellation, he understands, must uphold its word. A broken promise chips away at existential strength. The girl hands him a tablet, inscribed with the terms of their alliance. Written vertically, its form strange yet profound. The implications of the alliance, the intricacies and dangers, weigh on his mind. After a long time without meaningful interaction, Choi finds himself questioning his decisions. aware that this step might be one of many in a path wrought with unforeseen consequences. As he muses over the alliance, a familiar creature appears, the cat of lava and magma. The cat regards him with a look that seems both welcoming and mocking. It raises a paw, reminding him of its earlier temptations, urging him to serve rather than forge his path. With an air of disdain, it chastises him for joining an alliance of weaker constellations, subtly goading him toward ambition and power. This coalition of lesser-known, often underestimated constellations is a place of mutual aid and shared strength, existing apart from the more established and mighty celestial figures. Through the subtle hum of telepathic communication, the cat constellation welcomes him warmly, almost playfully, into their circle. It uses an almost sarcastic tone, conveying its message from mere inches away, yet refraining from physical words. Choi notes the familiarity of it all, thinking to himself how, in human terms, this meeting of the allied constellations feels like a Zoom meeting, a virtual gathering of minds rather than bodies. He ponders if the higher, more influential constellations must conduct their meetings in the same way. Choi discovers that the Alliance has only 2 of these constellations currently. He raises an eyebrow, wondering aloud, though silently, if that is all. The cat, perceiving his doubts, reacts swiftly, its telepathic tone sharpening as it half-jokingly threatens to withhold the gift it has prepared for him. It mentions how it is aware of Choi's recent pursuits in gathering precious metals like adamantium and orichalcum, and offers to aid him with its renowned blacksmithing skills. The cat speaks with the confidence of one who has shaped the very essence of weapons within the depths of the abyss, offering to forge Choi something of exceptional power, a weapon worthy of his accomplishments, if he formally joins their alliance. Choi, taken aback by the unexpected generosity, admits he had not considered receiving a gift for joining. He replies that he has not yet amassed enough orichalcum but would like to make a request once he's gathered more of the rare material. The cat constellation tilts its head in puzzlement, inquiring if the other constellation, the embodiment of dreams and greed, had not already gifted him something. The cat remarks how smoothly Choi's induction into the alliance had gone, how he had agreed even before the topic of gifts came up. Choi can sense the cat's amusement, the faint, mocking laughter emanating from its presence, as if it were chuckling at the foolish constellation it considers Choi to be. Choi brushes off the implication, casually remarking that he could leave the alliance at any time if he wished. The cat's mirth halts momentarily, then it dismisses his words as a jest, sensing the seriousness in Choi's voice but opting not to challenge it. The constellation of dreams and greed, a being who regards herself with high esteem, reminds Choi of the rarity of generosity among constellations, especially in alliances. She speaks of her preparations to keep him interested, revealing that she too has anticipated this moment by crafting a gift tailored to his needs. She produces a gleaming, spherical orb and hands it to Choi, a memento and a treasure filled with rank, martial art scrolls, and precious ingots of orichalcum. As he holds it, Choi realizes that the technique embedded within the scroll is akin to energy-draining magic, a form of absorption that holds formidable power against demons. The technique, an ancient art, stems from the nightmare domain but has yet to be mastered fully. She believes in his potential to refine it, recognizing a unique strength within him. Curiosity piqued, Choi decides to share the culmination of his efforts, displaying the vast collection of adamantium and orichalcum he has gathered over the millennia. The weight of time bears heavily on him, as he realizes he has lost track of the countless years he spent in the abyss. The sight of his amassed trove fills him with a quiet satisfaction, a reminder of the purpose he has carried since his first encounter with adamantium, to create the most resilient and versatile cooking utensils, a chopping board and frying pan forged to withstand any ingredient, any flame in this desolate realm. The cat stares, uncomprehending, as Choi explains his vision. Initially, it offers to craft grandiose weapons for him, a sword of orichalcum, a shield of adamantium, masterpieces befitting a warrior of his stature. When he declines, it suggests a mighty axe or suit of armor, though noting that the adamantium supply might fall short for a full suit. Choi, unwavering, insists that he wants only utensils, a chopping board and frying pan of adamantium, and dishes and silverware crafted from orichalcum. The cat hesitates, processing the absurdity of this request, wondering if Choi is mocking it. Yet, his tone is serious, and it realizes that he genuinely seeks this peculiar outcome. Flustered, it mutters under its breath, feeling a pang of embarrassment at the thought of creating culinary tools in place of weapons of legend. Resigned, it agrees to begin work, though it grumbles about the indignity of its task and curses him silently, wondering aloud if he's meant to suffer in hell for such an outrageous wish. Meanwhile, Choi recalls his recent conversation with the constellation of dreams and greed, where he had asked about the true nature of awakening. Despite his prowess and recent triumphs, Choi perceives himself as a novice among the constellations, a mere human who stumbled into the realm of the transcendent after defeating the formidable Varigos. Upon Varigos's death, the demon had addressed him as human, urging him to embrace the title of constellation. From that moment, he had been haunted by a universal resonance, a message that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of reality, insisting that he was destined for this path. Yet, he finds himself troubled by his inability to perform magic, a skill he considers intrinsic to the existence of a true constellation. The master of nightmares, the entity of dreams and greed, looks at him with a mix of amusement and exasperation, dispelling his self-doubt. She assures him that he is no mere rookie, no trainee among their kind. He is simply a constellation, as real as any other. She reveals that most constellations are not born, but rather appear spontaneously, emerging from the dreams, desires, and collective will of the beings within the universe. She herself materialized from the endless aspirations and cravings of mortals, becoming the embodiment of those intangible forces. The dominator of blood and war, and even the cat of love and magma, similarly emerged from nothing, a testament to the unpredictable power of existence. She conveys to Choi that his mere self-perception as unique should not alarm him. His journey reflects an extraordinary path, not an aberrant one. Accepting this, Choi takes a deep breath, closing his eyes as he internalizes the realization. He is a constellation, not merely by potential, but in essence. A surge of energy pulses through him, reverberating from the farthest reaches of the universe. Lights and shock waves spiral around him, growing in intensity, the resonance from the cosmos now fully awakened by his acceptance. His transformation is instantaneous and profound. His gaze sharpens, his body shifts, muscles refining as a newfound strength courses through every fiber of his being. His hair lengthens, glimmering with an otherworldly sheen as his aura expands, formidable and radiant. He stands taller, more resolute, as though embodying the boundless power he has only just acknowledged. The birth of a new star pierces the dark and deep periphery of the abyss, casting a fleeting glow across the vast shadows. As the star's light fades into the black, another scene unfolds. A fierce battle between Atacaniel and a monstrous entity from the abyss. The angel's relentless attacks seem ineffective, barely grazing the creature's thick, hideous hide. Suddenly, a constellation's presence surprises Atacaniel, and the angel does not do much noticing at that time. This constellation happens to be the undefeated avatar of training, Choi, who offers a blessing to aid the angel, a gesture that shocks Atacaniel, who nonetheless accepts it without hesitation. Grateful, he vows in his heart to repay the debt someday. Infused with Choi's blessing, Atacaniel moves with newfound agility, his every skill and technique feeling strangely familiar, as though he had mastered them ages ago. Meanwhile, the constellation of dreams and greed observes, remarking with a sense of knowing amusement that Choi's enthusiasm must be great indeed. She muses on Choi's unusual choice to intervene with another constellation's servant, noting that while this situation may be harmless, he should exercise caution. Were the servant under a more possessive constellation, such actions could be construed as an insult or even an act of aggression. Servants are extensions of their master's authority, deeply intertwined with their very essence and purpose. Reflecting, Choi understands her caution. The realization dawns upon him that as a constellation, his actions carry an immense weight. Only recently has he come to comprehend that he is, in fact, a constellation. His path to this point has been one of near constant misunderstanding, with each obstacle and strange occurrence mistaken as a divine test or trial. Even after being lost within the depths of the abyss, he saw every challenge as part of his training, his resolve unbroken. Looking back on his past choices, Choi feels the weight of his missteps, yet he understands that they have shaped him. The past remains immutable, a foundation upon which he stands. The constellation of dreams and greed offers him guidance, explaining that a constellation's sight is far-reaching but not unlimited. She advises that when one gains a servant, they should focus on their servant's presence, attuning their power to extend their awareness. Choi realizes that, had he not pursued his own path, he would likely have ended up as someone else's servant. Now, through his authority, he can perceive his ally Onyx, the stone serpent, and his kin. It dawns on him that his existential power can expand his perception, allowing him a broader view. Yet, he also notes the inherent limits. Even constellations cannot exceed the bounds of their own capacity, no matter how vast. Conserving power is futile, for existential energy naturally replenishes itself, but expanding beyond their own limits remains impossible. Constellations, he realizes, often use their servants to explore and navigate the unknowns of the infinite abyss, relying on the shared perceptions of allies to understand this expansive realm. Allies grant their sight to one another, building a network of shared visions and knowledge. Yet, even in this shared sight, Choi recognizes a limitation, a point in the abyss where his vision cannot penetrate. The constellation of dreams and greed acknowledges this, explaining that she has hidden certain realms within her domain, particularly the places where she traps her nightmares. These hidden zones are tucked away, unreachable even to allied sight, masked from prying eyes for reasons of pride or secrecy. Curious, Choi questions her reasoning, and she admits it is a matter of personal embarrassment. His servant Arnie was specifically chosen to guide him here, selected for his rare ability to control his desires. In a realm where nightmares often succumb to temptation, Arnie's discipline is a rare virtue. Before Choi departs, the constellation of dreams and greed offers a parting sentiment, finding it refreshing to encounter a constellation capable of expressing gratitude. She acknowledges his journey as a newly born constellation and advises him to proceed carefully, warning him against unnecessary fights with other constellations. In battles between constellations, the outcome is often decided by the number of servants one commands, as greater numbers bestow greater existential power. Choi ponders the existence of another sky beyond this one, an even higher realm. The position he occupies now, despite his years of relentless training, is merely the starting line, the precipice of the abyss of constellations. He asks if the constellation of dreams and greed knows anything about Earth, his place of origin. She admits only to having heard of it, a distant planet beyond the abyss, teeming with followers. Prominent constellations wait eagerly for the gate to Earth to open, viewing it as a rich ground for expanding their domains. The mention of Earth surprises her when Choi reveals his origin. To her, the very idea that a connection already exists between Earth and the abyss is astonishing. She imagines chaos unleashed on a vulnerable world, yet Choi assures her that nothing seems amiss. Life on Earth remains strangely normal. He realizes that constellations are not yet waging open conflict over Earth. Instead, they bide their time, waiting for the right moment, wary of tipping the balance and inviting rivals to seize control. Earth's potential as a domain has not gone unnoticed, and each constellation seeks to cultivate followers rather than risk draining power in senseless skirmishes. The constellation of dreams and greed observes that Choi is fortunate. His neighboring constellations are benevolent, for if they had been aggressive or malicious, they would have likely attempted to subjugate him without hesitation, regardless of the risks. She voices a sentiment shared by many. The notion of leaving a home planet at the mercy of an unfamiliar constellation is unnerving. If a constellation were to claim Earth and its souls as servants, the benefits would be immense. Choi contemplates this, absorbing the implications of their conversation. Raising his hands, waves of energy radiate outward. His hair, grown long during his transformation, are now cut down by him with his bare hands. The constellation of dreams and greed regards him thoughtfully, asking if he intends to return to Earth, if he can truly hold on to his mortal self now that he is a constellation. Choi considers this, aware of the symbolic weight of his decision. To him, his long hair is an obstacle to his discipline and training. This single, mundane aspect of his form reminds him of who he was. The constellation of dreams and greed asks if he is planning to return to Earth and offers him a piece of advice. Revealing himself as a constellation in the vicinity of Earth would be a reckless move, especially with neighboring constellations constantly observing and vying for influence. Even the most benevolent constellations, who seem to act out of goodwill, possess an underlying competitiveness and a distrust toward new contenders. If they perceive him as a threat, especially if he seems to encroach upon souls they already view as their own, they would not hesitate to turn against him. Their power far surpasses his, tenfold over, and regardless of their nature, they harbor a deep-seated fear that he could steal what they believe is rightfully theirs. She understands the risks well, advising Choi to hide his powers, to conceal the identity that marks him as a being of Earth's origin. Her caution is clear. If other constellations discover that an Earthborn star has returned, it will inevitably upset the balance, forcing the rest of the constellations into an unwilling contest. This would expose him to attention he cannot afford and stir conflicts that no alliance could hope to quell. Instead, she advises that he work quietly, blending into the fabric of Earth's humanity, seeking followers and worshippers in a subtle manner. By nurturing loyalty and admiration, Choi can slowly attract individuals whose souls willingly align with his essence, seeking his blessings. Only then, when the constellations of Earth are too late to notice his presence, will he have established a base of worship that no one could dispute. Choi feels a complex mixture of excitement and unease. He has never envisioned himself as a figure of fame or worship. In his mind, all paths in life are of equal value, but his companion, this constellation of dreams and greed, tells him that his goal cannot be achieved by modest actions alone. She knows he needs the charisma of a celebrity, the allure that makes mortals gravitate toward him. For Choi, it is an unfamiliar concept. He never desired fame, and the notion of becoming a public figure feels like stepping into a world far removed from his own. Yet, part of him understands this necessary transformation. There is one particular constellation on Earth who knows of Choi's past, a fact that complicates his plans further. His companion suggests that they consider allying with this constellation. Adding another to their alliance, even a small one, could prove invaluable. When she questions how he came to know this constellation, Choi hesitates, reluctant to delve into the complexities of his past. Eventually, however, he gives in, relaying the story as plainly as he can. He recounts the strange meeting with the goddess of balance, a mysterious figure who guided him into the depths of the abyss. His companion listens, unimpressed by his narrative, dismissing it as retarded. She had, it seems, heard tales of this goddess of balance before, and her dismissive response brings a touch of self-doubt to Choi. It is clear that foresight, even in a place as chaotic as the abyss, is a rare and often mistrusted gift. Those who possess it can glimpse shadows of the future, but without a keen mind to interpret these visions, they risk becoming little more than a burden. She warns him against relying on such visions and cautions him against recruiting constellations who lack the wisdom to wield foresight effectively. Their discussion is interrupted by the cat of lava and magma. The cat reminds them that now is not the time for pickiness. They need allies, regardless of their strengths or faults, if they hope to stand against the dark constellations that threaten them all. Choi considers this advice carefully. He knows that alliances come with risks, and yet, the prospect of forming a coalition appeals to him. The goddess of balance, an elusive figure in his life, remains a potential but unconfirmed ally. He cannot gauge her reaction to his newfound identity, nor does he know how to contact her. When he asks if either of his companions have heard of the goddess's whereabouts, they respond with indifference. To them, she is an insignificant figure, unworthy of attention. Choi feels a pang of determination. Though he has garnered several powerful allies since his awakening, the journey back to Earth remains an elusive goal. He realizes that finding his path will require relentless searching, but the goddess of balance might offer him a clue. If he encounters constellations who know her, they might help bridge the gap, drawing him closer to Earth and, ultimately, his purpose. Later, Aruni comes at his command and escorts him around the territory. When asked about his plans to return to Earth, Choi explains that he must wait for a unique piece of equipment. The cat of lava and magma is forging it, and Choi has no choice but to remain until the process is complete. The servant nods, understanding the magnitude of such craftsmanship. If the cat's skill is anything to judge by, the equipment will be legendary, perfectly tailored to Choi's powers. As they walk, the servant asks where he would like to go next. Choi requests to see a place known as the Well of Enlightenment, a forbidden training ground designed to test the limits of one's desires. After a short walk, they arrive in an old, run-down room. He learns that many nightmares have attempted to train here, only to lose their minds under its intense trials. The well, deceptively simple in appearance, demands a person to lift a bucket of water from its depths. But the water's weight mirrors the strength of the desires harbored within the person attempting the task. Even the most focused meditation cannot ease this weight, which presses down relentlessly, increasing as one's desires intensify. Choi steps forward, gripping the rope attached to the bucket. He pulls, feeling the weight of his own ambitions, memories, and longings bearing down on him. As he struggles, voices echo from the well, whispering temptations and regrets, calling him to abandon his powers and return to Earth. They remind him of all he once cherished, his beloved training grounds, the familiar weight of his precious barbells and dumbbells, the spicy ramen overloaded with chili powder, the stories of fantasy that sparked his curiosity, and also movies. Images of his old life unfold before him, each memory sharper and more vivid than the last. He feels the familiar touch of his past love, her hand resting gently in his. They had parted on uncertain terms, never truly hating each other, and the allure of a fresh start pulled at him, offering peace if only he would release the rope. From afar, his companions, the constellation of dreams and greed and the cat of lava and magma, watch in silent concern. They recognize that even Choi, the undefeated avatar of training, faces a formidable challenge. The well is designed to probe the heart, to uncover one's deepest vulnerabilities and fears. For most, it would trigger an endless spiral, a descent into madness. But Choi, they remind themselves, is no ordinary figure. As a constellation, his spirit is tempered by resilience and fortified by purpose, sparing him from the frailties of a mere nightmare. Choi does not relent. He disregards the whispers, holding fast to the rope with a steely resolve. Planting his feet against the well's stone wall, he continues pulling. Instead of resisting the weight of his desires, he embraces it, using it as a tool, as fuel for his obsession with strength. His body strains, muscles taut as he performs pull-ups with the rope and bucket, defying the purpose of the well itself. The weight grows heavier, each lift demanding more of his strength, yet he presses on, his focus unwavering. His companions are stunned, witnessing a spectacle they could scarcely have imagined. Rather than emptying himself of desire, Choi channels it, transforming it into a means to strengthen himself further. This is just excessive. Even the darn cat knows this. The well of enlightenment was a dangerous place. The water in the well became heavier as the person's desires grew stronger. Many people had gone mad trying to conquer the well, their minds broken by their own desires. It was a place of nightmares and madness. But our boy Choi stood in front of it, smiling. He saw the well as a way to test his strength and mind. Unlike others, he was not overwhelmed by his desires as he had learnt to control them and also how to focus on what was important. He remembered his past when times were simple, when he had the comforts from Earth like television and ramen and more. But now, in the harsh reality of the abyss, he had learned to let go of such fantasies. His only desire was to survive and grow stronger. As he draws water from the well, he is let pass easily, and the ease gradually rises, but not to a point he cannot handle. Civilized, Choi comes to understand that in one or the other way, the well merely challenges his muscles by attempting to overload him with miraculous weights that he can carry, instead of loading his heart with the greedy force that one may so often feel. The constellation of dream and greed watches this mortal and is amazed at his strength, asking how this fragile thing could bear the weight of the desire within him and not be crushed by it. She is fully aware that even the stars in the sky, which make up the constellations, are equally not immune to what you may call their carnal desires or selfish prophecies or dreams. That a member of the human race such as Choi can cope with these forces is somewhat commendable. It is not his strength that matters, but his ability to be strong for what needs to be done. Choi spent his days training hard at the Well of Enlightenment. He learned to control his power by focusing his thoughts. Sometimes he would empty his mind, making the training easier. Other times, he would focus intensely, making the training harder. This way, he could push himself to his limits, both physically and mentally. And in moments when he seeks a break, he turns to Arnie for sparring sessions that hone his battle techniques. The constellation of dreams and greed, in her talks with him one day, mentions how worried she had been that he might turn out to be impatient. But this cannot be for Choi, who has nothing to do there but train. She explains that although he is a battle-type constellation with incredible strength, he may have the opportunity to increase the number of his followers and create his own kingdom. But it is still an idea for the far future, as he is having a hard time just taking care of his own body. They reached the Cat of Lava and Magma, who gifted Choi with cooking utensils forged from adamantine and orichalcum, two of the most durable metals in existence. Each tool was a masterpiece capable of withstanding immense forces. Choi was amazed by the tool's resilience. He tested a knife by striking out with it while using a powerful celestial punch, but to his surprise, the knife remained unscathed. This terrifies the two others near him, who warn him to be careful with such legendary weapons. They decide to let him test the knife on the utensils instead. Choi gladly agrees and uses the knife to deliver a blow to the utensils. Smoke rises when his attack makes contact. But when it clears, the utensils do not even have a single scratch or dent. This fills Choi with admiration for the tools and respect for the cat's skill. Choi then spends some time cooking dishes using these indestructible utensils, the most notable being a bowl of rice soup made with hydra meat. The flavors are rich and potent, the soup imbued with a warmth. When he serves it to those around him, the nightmares and servants who dwell in the abyss, they are entranced by the meal. The taste is simply way too good. On tasting the soup, Arnie finds himself overcome with delight. The hunger of the nightmares transforms into a battle of desires that nearly spirals out of control. For a moment, chaos reigns as they vie for a taste of the prized dish, only calming under Choi's stern gaze. However, this escapade earns him the title of the undefeated avatar of rice soup among these nightmares. Yet even amidst this rare moment of happiness and fun, Choi remains vigilant. Soon after his cooking and feasting, he ventures further into the territories of the abyss, crossing into the domain governed by the Cardinal of Plague and Darkness, a figure whose very presence is anathema to light and life. The Cardinal regards Choi with disdain, his gaze cold and assessing. To protect himself, Choi cloaks his existence with a sliver of his power, hiding himself from the Cardinal's relentless gaze. His presence fades from the awareness of others, allowing him a brief moment of peace. But the Cardinal, sensing the disturbance within his realm, summons his servants, instructing them to locate the undefeated avatar of training, as Choi is now known. Though the cardinal's servants scour the realm, they are forbidden to engage directly, for they know that no single one of them possesses the strength to confront Choi. The cardinal warns them that brute strength will be of no use, that only wisdom and cunning will prevail if they hope to contend with Choi. One of the servants currently standing in Choi's way informs Choi that he has trespassed in his master's realm, a transgression that could not be overlooked. Yet, the cardinal offers him a choice, a chance to avoid retribution by accepting a position as the cardinal's servant. In doing so, his past actions would be forgiven, his slate wiped clean. Choi thought about the cardinal's offer. He knew it was a trap. But Choi was not afraid. He smiled slightly, knowing that he would not be swayed by the cardinal's threats. The servant spoke with arrogance, but there was a foul smell about him. Choi was disgusted and angry as he covered his nose. He ignored the servant and started shouting, demanding to speak to the cardinal himself. He was not afraid to face the powerful cardinal. Determination courses through Choi. He lashes out, destroying objects within the cardinal's domain with the sheer force of his unleashed energy, causing shockwaves that ripple through the surroundings. Servants fall, one by one as they stand in his path. Choi's rage is unrestrained, his power growing along with his frustration with the cardinal. How long will this supposed ruler hide behind servants? His patience wears thin, and he begins to question aloud if the cardinal is afraid, a being unworthy of the title he holds, unable to defend his own territory. With each strike, Choi's skill, subdue the strong and assist the weak, activates, amplifying his strength. His existential power surges, feeding his presence and force. Another skill, self-conquer, stirs within him, heightening his determination and presence. The other constellations in his alliance can see him through the connection they share, watching him initiate a battle they had warned him against. The constellation of dreams and greed urges him to reconsider. The cat, a fellow constellation ally, queries his actions with alarm, wondering if Choi's fury stems purely from the cardinal's trickery. But Choi's mind races with clarity. He remembers his struggles in the abyss, clawing his way through challenges and surviving as a weak human in hostile realms. The cardinal's offer is nothing but a slight to him, a reminder of his past vulnerability. No, he refuses to go back to those times. He realizes now that he must forge his own path as a constellation, even if it means risking his existence against this powerful foe. As Choi's inner resolve hardens, his hidden skill, Celestial Meteor Blast, awakens, merging with his divine celestial technique. The initial determination of the avatar of training floods his veins, stronger than it has been since he first entered the abyss. All the pain, the challenges, the humiliation, the memories return to him, fueling his resolve. No longer is he a mere constellation hiding in the shadows, frightened by older, more powerful beings. He feels the weight of his struggle lifting, replaced by the fierce pride of someone who refuses to bend. The Cardinal of Plague and Darkness finally appears, his descent casting an oppressive aura that fills the battlefield. The servants who have managed to survive Choi's initial onslaught rejoice, celebrating the arrival of their master. The Cardinal's presence is formidable, and his expression is a mix of contempt and irritation, as though he cannot comprehend Choi's audacity. The Cardinal of Plague and Darkness studies him, calculating. In his mind, he weighs the risks. Defeat would mean complete annihilation, an erasure from existence. Yet if he were to back down, his honor and authority would be shattered, and the other constellations would mock him, seeing him as weak. But before he can talk to the newcomer, he is attacked in a sudden burst by Choi. Still, Choi is undeterred. He senses the disparity in their existential power. The Cardinal's force is indeed overwhelming, but Choi knows he cannot falter. Prolonging the fight would be a death sentence. He needs to act decisively, to strike with every ounce of strength he possesses. Without hesitation, he charges his fist, gathering every fragment of his celestial power, focusing it into a single, concentrated force. His celestial punch. He drives it forward, aiming directly for the Cardinal's chest. The impact reverberates through the air, sending shockwaves that ripple outward. The Cardinal of Plague and Darkness recoils, pain flashing across his face. Physical combat is foreign to most constellations, beings of energy and essence who rarely confront each other so directly. Yet here, at this moment, he feels the raw intensity of Choi's assault. Confusion flickers in the Cardinal of Plague and Darkness's eyes as he attempts to process what has just transpired. Was this some form of magic? His servants watch in awe and horror, unable to comprehend their master's pain, a sight they have never witnessed before. And Choi, fueled by the knowledge that his attack has worked, wastes no time. He charges again, launching another celestial punch, his own presence flaring with existential power. Every punch drives his fury and defiance deeper into the heart of the battlefield. As Choi continues his flurry of attacks, he wonders if the Cardinal has some sort of hidden move. The Cardinal might just be luring him in by faking weakness. Little does our cute Choi know that the Cardinal is not feigning a darn thing. The Cardinal is just weak. Meanwhile, the servants and followers of the constellation watch in reverence at the battle unfolding in front of their eyes, viewing it as a beautiful and heavenly sight, although it is actually a devastating battle. Yet they cannot grasp the flow of the battle and are still underestimating Choi as being weaker and incapable of challenging their master. With each passing moment, Choi's resolve only grows stronger, his attacks fiercer. He channels every ounce of his determination into a final, devastating strike. The impact is earth-shattering. The Cardinal of Plague and Darkness reels, his essence wavering, fragments of his power dissipating into the air. Choi stands over him, breathing heavily but unbroken, his gaze unwavering as he stares down at his foe. In that moment, Choi realizes he has forced the Cardinal of Plague and Darkness into submission, his own power and presence now undeniable. Choi knew that he had his opportunity to defeat the Cardinal of Plague and Darkness. In the murky depths of the abyss, the smell of rotting pus lingers heavily in the air, an almost tangible force of decay. Choi stands over the defeated form of the Cardinal of Plague and Darkness, his muscles tense and his mind alert, not fully convinced of his victory. The battle has been grueling, yet he cannot deny the surprising outcome. Against all odds, his last strike has been powerful enough to bring this once-feared mid-level constellation to his knees. The Cardinal lies on the ground, too weakened to rise, pleading for mercy, his voice wavering as he swears allegiance and offers everything he has: his territory, his servants, his name itself. Choi feels a strange sense of disbelief creeping through him, a suspicion that this is merely another trick in the Cardinal's arsenal. Yet he can detect no deception in the words of the fallen constellation. Even so, he activates his celestial divine technique, feeling the energy surge within him, unwilling to lower his guard even for a moment. The constellation of Greed and Dreams and the Lava Cat observe in astonishment. For a constellation to surrender, especially to one who has not reached the highest ranks, is nearly unheard of. The Lava Cat reassures Choi, explaining that a sworn oath on one's true name in the constellation world binds the speaker to honesty. No falsehood can pass their lips. Choi's suspicions ease, though his mind remains wary. He questions why a powerful being like the Cardinal would willingly surrender, but the Lava Cat remarks that even constellations will yield if struck with enough force. As the Cardinal of Plague and Darkness continues his pleas for mercy, Choi experiences a strange surge of power. The skill of subdue the strong and assist the weak activates, amplifying his own existence. His inner strength expands, flowing through him in waves. The skill of self-conquer also activates, reinforcing his resolve and sharpening his focus. Choi can sense the Cardinal's kingdom, the domain of plague and darkness itself, a grotesque land where rivers flow with putrid pus and buildings stand as masses of decomposed tumors. He feels the presence of the Cardinal's servants, now bound to him, yet the stench of the place is nearly overwhelming. In a firm voice, Choi informs the Cardinal that he has no desire to rule over such a realm or command the loyalty of its inhabitants. He tells the Cardinal to retain his kingdom and servants, caring little for these burdens. This decision shocks the Cardinal, who stares up at him in bewilderment. The War of Constellations is a brutal, all-consuming affair. The winner traditionally claims everything from the defeated, erasing their existence entirely to prevent any chance of retaliation. Yet Choi shows unexpected mercy, allowing the Cardinal his life and his domain. Relief floods the Cardinal's expression, yet something darker lingers beneath. The confusion and frustration of a powerful being shackled to another. The Lava Cat, watching with a curious gleam in its eyes, points out the unusual nature of Choi's choice, suggesting that he has made an error in allowing the Cardinal to retain his power and kingdom. But Choi remains undeterred. Kingdom management holds no appeal for him, and he relies on his martial skills and battle tactics rather than the structures of rulership. Remembering his training with Arnie, he recalls the strategy of staying close to his opponent to neutralize their existential powers, a tactic that has served him well against constellations. As his reputation spreads throughout the abyss, tales of the undefeated avatar of training, defeating the Cardinal of Plague and Darkness, echo among the constellations. This reputation draws the attention of the constellation of the Clockwise Needle, another mid-level entity that seethes with hostility. He speaks of his carefully laid plans, determined to resist what he perceives as an unworthy intruder. With a sneer, he derides Choi as a mere nuisance reeking of decay, swearing to protect his kingdom at any cost. Once again, Choi's skills activate, subdue the strong and assist the weak, and self-conquer, strengthening his resolve and preparing him for the confrontation ahead. He understands that he must battle not only this new foe but also the entirety of the constellation's kingdom, servants, and allies. The ensuing war is relentless, consuming over 2 centuries. Choi fights tirelessly, striking down each servant and shattering the defenses until, finally, he stands victorious. The constellation of the clockwise needle is defeated, and his power and influence are shattered. Emboldened by his victories, Choi moves on, facing other mid-level constellations. One by one, they fall before him, each battle a test of strength and endurance. Among them, he encounters the voice from the deep sea, a spectral entity renowned for its power over the abyssal depths. This constellation acknowledges Choi's prowess and suggests negotiation, yet Choi's warrior spirit refuses to compromise. The two engage in combat, their clash spanning nearly 150 years, until Choi ultimately prevails. He then confronts another formidable foe, the Raging Old Man, a constellation with a reputation for boundless fury. The Raging Old Man is annoyed at the inactivity of other constellations, unwilling to allow Choi's unchecked rise. By now, Choi has formed alliances with the constellations he has defeated. With the Lava Cat by his side, Choi meets the Raging Old Man's challenge. Their combined might overwhelm the old constellation in a mere 6 hours, driving other constellations to flee in terror. Despite his victories, Choi feels a sense of melancholy, unable to find any path that leads him back to Earth. His skill in cooking, a modest B-rank ability within the Abyss, gradually evolves through constant practice, advancing to an impressive A rank. The act of hunting and cooking monstrous creatures becomes his cycle, his strange ritual of survival and growth. Each encounter, each meal, reminds him of a story he once read, a novel titled The Day of Idyllic Slaughter. He wonders if his life has become an endless loop of fighting, eating, and repeating. One day, as he is sitting after his meal and resting, a mysterious gate appears in front of him. He knows such gates lead to new challenges, but wonders jokingly if this might lead to Earth. But imagine his surprise when he steps through and finds himself in a familiar landscape. The mountains, the fresh air, and the solid ground felt real. He could not believe his eyes. Was this really Earth? Yeonsung Choi stood in a forest, unsure if it was really Earth. He looked around, confused and curious. The cat who happened to be observing his moves was also skeptical. It asked him if it was Earth, but he said he has to find people first to be sure. After walking around for a bit, he finds a village, but the structures do not look Korean. There was something different about it. He could not quite put his finger on it, but something was wrong. As they walked, the cat started asking if there were many kingdoms on Earth. Choi was surprised. Kingdoms were things of the past on Earth. But here, it seemed like kingdoms still existed. He was not sure if he was really on Earth anymore. As Choi ventured deeper into Effie's, he saw more and more strange things. He saw goblins, not the savage creatures from his world, but civilized beings living in towns. He realized that this world was very different from Earth, closer to the Abyss. Seeing the goblins standing in front of a gate, he realized that gates between worlds were common here, not rare and dangerous events. And as such, the goblins of Effie's were used to dealing with dangerous creatures that came out of gates. They had strong defenses and were well prepared for any threat. However, there was a fear in their eyes that day, as the gate looked much larger than they had handled before. Just then, a humongous creature stepped out of the gate. Akafenrir, the planet-eating wolf, was a threat to the entire world for the weak goblins. The goblins were scared, but their king, Odaigon, refused to run away. He was a powerful sorcerer, and he vowed to fight the monster, even if it meant his death. He was a brave and noble king, determined to protect his people. As Odaigon prepared to face the monstrous wolf, Choi arrived. His presence was powerful, and both Odaigon and the wolf noticed him. Choi saw the courage of Odaigon and the raw power of the wolf. He knew he had to act fast. He saw the wolf as a powerful creature, but not as intelligent as a constellation. Summoning every ounce of his strength, Choi activates his skill. Subdue the strong, assist the weak. He focuses it all into a single devastating blow. Unable to handle it at all, the world was defeated in an instant. The cat was amazed by Choi's strength. It had never seen such raw power before. Choi, with his calm demeanor, simply nodded. He had done what he had to do. Choi does feel a bit disappointed that such giant and powerful beings had such low pain tolerance. But the cat explains that such beings do not have much experience fighting with opponents on par with them, and praises Choi for his strategy. After the battle, the goblins came out of hiding. They expected Choi to be hostile, but he was kind and humble. Just when Choi was thinking the goblins might be hostile, Odagon, the Goblin King, knelt before Choi and declared him his master and god. The other goblins followed, bowing in respect. They were grateful for Choi's help and saw him as their savior. As the goblins worship him, Choi feels a surge of power as his followers increase and the world resonates with him. Before even realizing it, he has become a mid-tier constellation. He felt a connection to the goblins, their faith fueling his strength. He realized that he was more than just a warrior. He was a protector, a leader. He was their god. The cat of lava and magma acknowledges his growth, encouraging him to continue his journey and achieve similar feats on Earth. Choi's eyes glaze over as he gets lost in thought, his mind drifting back to his beloved hometown. Earth is a place of pragmatism and skepticism, where people are slow to revere and quick to question. Even if he defeated a beast 10 times the size of Akafenrir, he muses, Earth's people would see him as an extraordinary hunter, perhaps, but they would never bow before him as the goblins have. Instead, some would seek to challenge him, others to rival or even diminish his accomplishments. As Choi prepares to leave, the Goblin King makes a surprising offer, pledging to accompany him on his journey. Choi warns him of the perils of the abyss, the dark and twisted path he must take, yet Odagon remains steadfast. To abandon the one who saved his people would be a betrayal, and the Goblin King, with his unwavering loyalty, will not allow regret to stain his life. The huge magic storm that had appeared had started shattering rocks and was breaking off a big part of the land that felt as big as the continent itself. Despite magic storms being a common sight in the abyss, this magic storm especially felt stronger than others. The Goblin King looks at the storm with fear and apprehension, asking Choi if he had been traveling using them so far. Choi confirms this fact and tells him that if he can use it well, then one can travel further and faster than just walking. Odagon says that even constellations would avoid things like those, and Choi acknowledges this fact. Seeing his unshaken expression, Odagon resolves himself and says that he will go wherever his master goes. However, before they can step into it, the energy starts dissipating bit by bit and strong winds blow across their faces. Just when Odagon wonders if it is disappearing, he observes that the magic has combined and has started changing form. He thanks the gods for being safe, as he had thought that jumping into the storm, albeit to follow his master, would have been the end for him. Seeing him jumping for joy makes Choi wonder if this goblin is really going to be reliable. Odagon explains that since the magic storm looks quite large, it looks like it is disappearing quickly by making byproducts. A lot of structures in the abyss are byproducts, and this magic storm seems to have left a dungeon as its byproduct. Dungeons are a phenomenon in the abyss, having specific rules within it and being connected to another location. It is a place that acts like a bomb which releases monsters. Meanwhile, in the Mojave Desert in US Nevada, officials are gathered around it, discussing the gravity of the appearance of the dungeon there. The dungeon's name happens to be the Demon's Mirror of Delusioning. The limited number of people that can enter happens to be 10, and there are only 2 weeks and 11 hours left before a monster appears out of it. An older man is glaring at the newly appeared dungeon, saying that the younger generation was being disrespectful by naming dungeons and monsters and constellations as if it were some kind of game. The young man behind him states that the Confederation of Dungeon Analysis has speculated this as a C tier. He finds it lucky that it is a C tier, which is popular. The danger level is quite low even with one B tier hunter, but the rewards remain great nevertheless. At the moment, a hunter team named Gaines has obtained permission to hunt it. The Gaines is a team that has been getting a lot of attention because the son of the Parker Foundation newly made it. Since monsters of the abyss and magic were introduced into Earth, humanity's lives had changed. Strong crystals of magic possessed by monsters called cores were much cleaner and efficient sources of energy than what humans used to use before. Thanks to the abyss, humanity has been able to advance without producing any pollution, and other products were also useful as materials in biotechnology and science. The Parker Foundation made use of this opportunity and grew significantly. Pharmaceutical bio company Kaizi, the artifact company Parable, etc. were all large companies related to the abyss. But they also happened to be subsidiaries of the Parker industry. And the leader of the Gaines team, named Richard Parker, happens to be a B-class hunter, as well as the youngest son of the second CEO of the above-mentioned foundation. In other words, he is a rich third generation. And this very team has just arrived at the location of this C-rank dungeon that has just opened. As soon as he arrives, Richard Parker states that he will begin the subjugation of the dungeon. The person in charge of checking the dungeon entrance requirements says that there are only 8 people on his team, but Richard tells him that they have already added someone. However, it is only an E-rank hunter named Clayton who recently awakened. On the mention of this fact by the inspection officer, Richard replies that there are already 7 C-class hunters, and he himself is B-classed, so there should be no problem at all to enter. Saying so, he pushes him aside and walks ahead. The inspection officer sighs as he knows that an E-rank hunter will not be able to do anything meaningful inside. The E-rank hunter is seen just carrying a huge backpack. One can get a lot of rewards from a C-rank dungeon. As long as one is lucky, one can even obtain items worth millions, so it is uncommon for an E-rank to participate. As the permission to enter is given, the E-rank hunter comes up to Richard and whispers that he has placed his trust in him. Richard smiles, telling him to just stick to the plan. The old man who had been with the inspection officer since the beginning says that the E-ranker looks like a slave and nothing more. Seeing the officer confused, the old guy explains that the E-rank must have been hired with Richard's personal money. Since they cannot get any extra supplies in the dungeon, Richard must have needed a porter to carry things for his team. The dungeon countdown pauses, seeing that hunters have entered, and the inspection officer is about to go back and report this. But just then, there is a huge wave of magical energy and everyone panics, wondering if monsters might start pouring out of it. The old man still has his composure as he says that it would have been better if there were monsters coming out of it. But the dungeon had increased in size. This had become a fatal but rare case where there had been a mistake in the determination of the rank of the dungeon. The old man says that it might even be closer to an A-rank dungeon at this point, and nothing can be done about the team gains that have gone in. Meanwhile, within the dungeon, the hunter team is unaware of the terror they have set foot in, only thankful that it is not some kind of a swamp. The old man outside, who appears to be high-ranked, is quick in ordering the inspection official and tells him to send a report to the Confederation of Dungeon Management and also to send a call to the Parker Foundation, since one can never be too sure of what might happen. It would not be right to let the faint glimmer of hope die, the hope that the team might still be saved. It was the first day of the hunter group, Gaines, embarking on the task of clearing the dungeon known as the Demon's Mirror of Delusion. Richard Parker led the team into the cave, and the hunters accompanying him were murmuring among themselves about the cavern's vastness. The cave appeared suspiciously large and was enveloped in darkness and dampness as they ventured deeper into the underground labyrinth. As they proceeded, they stumbled upon a dilapidated structure filled with countless broken tombs. One of the soldiers suggested that they should prioritize finding an exit route first. However, Richard dismissed the suggestion, instructing the soldier to search for the exit alone, while he and the rest of the hunters would focus on locating the boss monster. Richard ordered the team to investigate the spaces between the buildings, as such gaps were ideal hiding spots for monsters. He also emphasized the importance of surveying the surroundings and using strengthening magic as necessary. In dungeon exploration, there are typically only two ways to escape. Either locate the exit connected to the outside world, or defeat the boss monster, which serves as the dungeon's core. In a C-class dungeon like this one, finding and defeating the boss monster was deemed the more efficient option. Soon, the boss monster's location was identified, and the hunters anticipated an ambush. Richard, maintaining his composure, ordered the group not to let their guard down and to get into position, as the creatures they would face were merely C-rank. As the team prepared to confront the monsters, they discovered the adversaries were ghouls. However, these ghouls were far from ordinary. They were classified as S-rank. Despite their rank, they held little monetary value. One of the hunters efficiently dispatched a group of ghouls using a flame arrow. The power of second circle magic was sufficient to eliminate the ghouls, but their numbers were overwhelming. It seemed as though the ghouls were endless, forcing the hunters to conserve their spells for a more focused attack. Although the ghouls themselves were not individually powerful, their sheer numbers demanded careful planning, with area of effect magic being the most practical approach. As the ghouls kept advancing, the hunters began to experience mana sickness. Their exhaustion grew evident, and they realized they could not hold out much longer. The effectiveness of their flame arrows was diminishing, and Richard, aware of the worsening situation, decided that if they continued to rely on magic, the entire team would succumb to mana sickness. He instructed the hunters to move forward and follow his lead as he forged a path through the onslaught. Typically, clearing a C-class dungeon is manageable as long as the team has at least one hunter ranked above C. For Gaines, with B-rank hunter Richard Parker on their side, this dungeon should have been an easy challenge. However, it quickly became apparent that something was amiss. The ghouls seemed infinite in number, surrounding the hunters from all sides. Despite their efforts, the situation grew increasingly dire. As the relentless ghouls closed in, one of the broken tombs suddenly erupted, and from within emerged the Goblin King, Odaigon. He and Choi had been teleported into the dungeon together, but Odaigon appeared visibly affected by teleportation sickness. To his astonishment, Choi seemed completely unfazed, despite the rupture in space and time. Odaigon, still regaining his composure, remarked on Choi's resilience, calling it remarkable. Choi, however, focused on the situation at hand, asking Odaigan if he could detect the scent of something rotting nearby. Odaigan used his magic, the Eye of the Bird of Prey, to scan the surroundings. He reassured Choi that he could assist him with magic if needed, and would even teach him how to harness it. As Odaigan scouted ahead, Choi directed his attention to a mine Odaigan had just passed. The ability of certain constellations to perceive their servants' surroundings as though through their own eyes gave Odaigan an unparalleled advantage, akin to a reconnaissance drone in a game. When Odaigan arrived at the indicated area, he examined the shadow of a building and discovered a unique material. Upon closer inspection, he found papers adorned with intricate patterns. Judging by the effort put into the design, Odaigan deduced that the papers likely contained valuable magic, possibly created by the civilization that had built the ruins. As he continued his exploration, Odaigan uncovered a massive army of ghouls, numbering in the thousands. Alarmed by the discovery, he asked Choi if he should eliminate them all. Odaigan suggested using a 7th circle area of effect magic spell, which would obliterate the ghouls and reduce the surrounding structures, and possibly even the boss, to dust. However, Choi cautioned Odaigan to remain calm. The mere presence of ghouls suggested that someone might be trapped in the ruins. With this realization, Choi resolved to advance further and assist those in need. If his instincts were correct, the individual trapped within the ruins could be instrumental in guiding them back to the surface. Without hesitation, Choi led the way, determined to save whoever might still be alive amidst the chaos. Odaigan stands in complete surprise as Choi reveals his intentions of aiming to reach Earth. The discovery Odaigan made earlier at the square turns out to be food commonly consumed by humans on Earth. As Choi shares this information, he attacks the ghouls surrounding them, eliminating them one by one using his celestial punch, effortlessly beheading them. The book Choi found is revealed to be a food and nutrient guide tailored for C-type hunters. This revelation astonishes Odaigan, who finds it difficult to comprehend the peculiar tastes of humans. Choi asks Odaigan to use magic to transform himself. He explains that encountering those trapped in their current forms could create complications, since not all goblins in the abyss lead civilized lives. Humans, who frequently encounter goblins in dungeons, harbor deep mistrust toward their kind. Odaigan is shocked to learn that someone is suggesting he assume the role of a monster. Choi explains that such is the nature of humans, urging Odaigan to come to terms with this reality. He insists Odaigan use circle magic polymorph to transform into a human. As a human, Odaigan's appearance is strikingly handsome. He admits he was considered attractive even among his fellow goblins, although his clothing resembles that of a fantasy magician. Despite this, his human form convincingly passes as one of Earth's inhabitants. Odaigan recalls the advice given by the constellation of Greed and Dreams, who once told Choi to change his identity before setting foot on Earth. Choi chooses to revert to how things were in the past, a decision he finds relatively simple. Meanwhile, the ghouls surrounding them seem to be behaving strangely, merely circling the area instead of attacking outright. This behavior makes Choi wonder about the nature of the boss monster controlling them and its hidden location. Odaigan speculates that if the boss monster possesses intelligence, it would employ more strategic methods instead of merely deploying ghouls to surround its targets. This observation leads him to conclude that the ghouls might not be under the control of a powerful magician, but rather linked to a monstrous entity known as Tarun. Referred to by the people of the Abyss as the King of Ghouls, Tarun is a fearsome creature with the combined appearance of 1,000 ghouls. Those who seek to locate the controller of the ghouls inevitably fall victim to Tarun. Though formidable in appearance, Tarun is a pitiful foe for individuals like Odaigan and Choi, who operate on a completely different level of power. However, for less skilled adventurers, the overwhelming numbers of ghouls spell certain death. Elsewhere, Richard Parker and a group of hunters are struggling to survive. The hunters have been hiding in the depths of the dungeon, with their food supplies completely depleted. They are left with nothing to consume but boots and gloves, their dire circumstances worsening with each passing day. The hunter group, known as Gaines, has spent 28 grueling days raiding the Devil's Mirror of Delusion. On the first day of their mission, they lost a significant portion of their supplies, but managed to find temporary refuge in a secluded building. The ghouls repeatedly snatch away the hunters' remaining food and water, forcing them to abandon most of their provisions in their haste to escape. The group secures themselves inside a building, closing off all entrances. They crush one ghoul that attempts to breach the opening, using flame marrow to incinerate it completely. Fortunately, the structure has no additional points of entry, allowing them to stay hidden for nearly a month. However, their confinement leads to growing desperation and tension among the group. One of the hunters confronts an E-rank member, accusing him of withholding the contents of his bag while the rest of the team faces starvation. The E-rank hunter hesitates, explaining that he is bound by a contract that forbids him from revealing what he carries. Richard steps in and demands the bag be opened. He grants permission as its owner and insists that the team has the right to inspect its contents. Although Richard doubts that the bag holds anything useful for their survival, the desperate circumstances leave them with no choice. When the bag is finally opened, the group discovers that the E-rank hunter had stocked various items prepared in a C-rank dungeon. Among the items are several bottles labeled in French, containing cosmetic products meant for use after showers. Additionally, the bag holds a book authored by Shakespeare. Unfortunately, none of these items offer any practical aid in their current predicament. All of them were disheartened. For carrying all these useless impractical stuff, they had hired a porter. Only 10 people were allowed in a dungeon, and there were 8 hunters, including the captain and a porter. One of the hunters blames Richard for their plight, stating that it is the leader's responsibility to ensure the survival of the team. The accusation takes Richard by surprise, leaving him momentarily speechless. The disgruntled hunter appeals to Master Ganian, a senior member of the group, urging him to intervene. However, Ganian refuses to take sides, emphasizing that internal conflict will only lead to the group's downfall. He advises everyone to remain calm and focus on finding a solution to endure until a rescue team arrives. In his efforts to restore peace, Ganian overlooks the harsh reality that no rescue team is coming. The dungeon only permits 10 individuals at a time, and the rules do not account for reinforcements. The hunters, growing impatient, press Richard to take action. They demand he lead them outside to confront the ghouls, accusing him of cowardice for remaining passive. Frustrated and angered, Richard reminds them that they all chose to follow him for financial gain. The tension escalates as the hunters grow increasingly hostile toward Richard, questioning his ability to fight 6 C-rank hunters simultaneously. In response, Richard activates a powerful skill known as a Holo's Frozen Rapid Bullet, a 5th circle magic spell that unleashes a barrage of icy projectiles on enemies within a specific radius. The ability, purchased with the clan's resources, ensures that any hunter foolish enough to charge at him will face certain death. Master Ganian remains seated and detached from the unfolding conflict. When Richard asks for his opinion, the senior hunter calmly states that Richard would not have heeded his advice regardless. The remark causes Richard to cool down, recognizing the truth in Ganian's words. He comes to terms with the futility of fighting his own team members, acknowledging that their collective fate is sealed if they remain trapped. Despite Richard's resignation, the other hunters refuse to give up. They argue that they have endured for an entire month and see no reason to abandon hope now. If a rescue team were to arrive after they had given up, it would bring them shame. Richard bitterly remarks that if anyone truly comes to save them, he will donate his entire fortune to that person. At this critical moment, Choi suddenly breaks through the sealed door of the building. He surveys the scene inside the cramped room, his piercing gaze falling on the group of desperate hunters. Without hesitation, he asks if anyone among them hails from Earth. Upon getting no answer, he asks again, louder this time. Richard Parker mindlessly answers that he is from Earth, unable to hide his surprise at the unbelievable situation. All the other hunters become excited, thinking a rescue team has finally arrived. They feel happy, believing they have been saved. However, the senior hunter calls them fools, reminding them to prepare for battle instead. He questions how they can trust this situation, pointing out that only one person can enter the dungeon, yet here they have 2, Choi and Odagon. The senior hunter accuses Choi of lying, claiming he never entered through the dungeon's door. Choi responds that he fell through an abyss, explaining that abyss disappearances are rare accidents. He says that while most people who get sucked into gates or dungeons never return, a few get extremely lucky and make it back. The senior hunter remains skeptical, suggesting that Choi could be an illusion, magic, or even a monster instead of someone who truly fell into the abyss. Choi says he does not care if anyone trusts him. He challenges the senior hunter, asking what he would do if he did not believe him. The senior hunter looks at Choi and Odagon, considering the possibility that they are telling the truth. However, he also thinks about how desperate their group is, having been broken apart and starving for almost a month. Most of the hunters are lower than B rank, leaving them with no other choice but to believe Choi. Choi asks again if everyone is from Earth, surprising the hunters with his unusual excitement. They suspect he might be under the influence of something, but his happiness convinces the senior hunter to consider his story about falling into the abyss. Suddenly, Richard remembers the countless ghouls that were outside and questions where they went. Choi explains that he killed them all, shocking the group. He points to Odagon, introducing him as an incredible magician. Choi recalls his Earth arrival plan, which he created in alliance with his fellow constellations and relayed to the Goblin King. He had planned to quietly increase his number of worshippers without drawing the attention of other constellations on Earth. For now, he intends to observe the current situation instead of taking bold action. The senior hunter questions Odagon, asking if he too came from an abyss disappearance. Choi interrupts, saying Odaigan has a sad story and lost his memory. Odaigan, however, dismisses the human's pity as unnecessary. The senior hunter doubts the claim that Odaigan single-handedly killed all the ghouls, as it seems impossible even for two people. He then asks if Choi uses magic. Choi replies that he is a martial artist, surprising everyone. The senior hunter is especially astonished, saying it has been a long time since he encountered a martial artist. Choi comments that martial arts were not considered bad back on Earth. He then asks which year it is, to which someone replies it is 2039. Choi reveals that he has been away from Earth for 30 years. This shocks the group, as the world record for surviving outside Earth is 28 years, and that person ended up in a mental asylum. Another hunter mentions a best-selling novel about someone who wandered for 26 years. One of the hunters stumbles at this revelation. Choi orders Odaigan to start a fire. As Odaigan prepares to address him as master, Choi tells him to call him brother instead. Choi kicks a nearby rock, smashing it into pieces and shaping them into plates, leaving everyone amazed by his skill. He brings out some meat, explaining that survival programs like Man vs. Wild taught him how to eat anything and remain self-sufficient. As the meat cooks, the irresistible smell makes the hunters' mouths water. At first, the hunters hesitate to eat, but the sight of the juices and oil dripping from the meat is too tempting to resist. They begin eating, savoring the deep, savory flavor like it is a king's feast. Choi notices the silence that falls over the group as they eat. He wonders if they have realized he served them meat from the ghouls. Instead, the hunters are teary-eyed, overwhelmed with gratitude for the food. The senior hunter realizes the meat is not ordinary. It contains magical power, which he feels as his mana regenerates. Normally, using a few arrows leaves him exhausted, but now he feels capable of shooting 10 or more. He concludes that Choi must have given them this rare meat out of compassion, knowing how helpless they are. Odaigan then quietly suggests that Choi discard the lower quality meat before anyone finds out what it really is. The thing is, the hunters were so starved that they had never noticed the entire time that they were eating the meat of the ghouls. In the dungeon, one had to kill both the ghouls and the boss to leave, so now they just had to kill the leftover ghouls. When asked how he knew, Choi simply attributed it to his knowledge from the abyss. Richard nods before glaring at the people who are just exiting the cave. The lot look uncomfortable, as if trying to apologize to Richard, but he does not give them the chance. Richard is fuming in anger as he walks away with two others, leaving Choi and Odaigan thinking they must have had a fight. Odaigan remarks that humans are quite pathetic for fighting during emergencies too. Choi smiles in amusement and tells him that he is human too. Odaigan panics and says he did not mean to mock him. A while later, while Odaigan is standing at a distance, the uncomfortable lot of C-rank hunters who are on bad terms with Richard at the moment act utterly respectful to Odaigan. They try to sweet-talk him with the purpose of looking for a new boss. But such flattery does not please Odaigan, instead disgusting him. He states that his master had told him to stay put, so he is not doing anything else. Further, he could see through their intentions. Choi, who is observing from a distance, is interested, and one of Richard's partners tries to explain it to him. Ignoring that, Choi is more confused why he is getting so much respect, so the person mentions that Choi had saved their lives, and he was even a senior to them if he survived out there for 30 years. Of course, people tend to get close to powerful hunters, but what Choi does not understand is why those people are trying to get close only with Odaigan. He wonders why Richard and his friends are not coming to him. Richard, who is now hit with this awkward question, gets uncomfortable, and they hesitantly mentions that it's because he is a martial arts user. Choi is exasperated. After all, there are martial arts users like the A-rank Siwon Lee, so they should not be treated that poorly. Little does he know. He is filled with shock as the two of them explain that in 2009, when Yunsung Choi left to the abyss, there indeed used to be hope for martial arts, and it was even believed that it had a clear future. But its downfall came when it was revealed to the public that the hunter Siwon Lee had bribed the judge and messed with the testing gear to get a higher rank evaluation than their actual rank, much like many other fakes who were starting to get exposed at around the same time. This is a life-shattering truth for Choi, who falls to his knees from knowing that his idol was just a scammer. This brought the downfall of martial arts, as new hunters did not want to learn it anymore. After receiving all that information, Choi tries to reel in his anger and sadness, while the rest look at his strange expression in confusion. He asks them one last question about whether there had been any constellation sightings on Earth. It absolutely shocks him when they tell him that there had indeed been an incident in 2011. Had Choi really been too late? But as he got to hear more, he learnt that was not the case. The fall of the year was filled with the exposure of fake ranks. But one particular day, A humongous gate appeared in the sky and an entire army of gigantic, mindless monsters poured out of it. The army clearly aimed to take over Earth and give the souls to their constellation. Choi is taken aback and asks just what had happened to Earth in that case. Seeing him panic, Richard's partner tells him to calm down. They had apparently managed to stop the monsters, albeit with numerous sacrifices of hunters who were all mobilized. As Choi learns of this fact, he thinks there is nothing else left for him to do, and feels that his years in the abyss have gone to waste. He wonders if the goddess mistranslated her own vision, or if it was wrong to begin with. But the constellation of dreams and greed notifies him that it was not just a small fight that mortals would have been able to stop even with their combined power. After all, it is not just about being strong or weak, it is about how constellations and mortals are completely different entities, and no matter how many hunters there are, they will be nothing but bugs to the constellations. Of course it felt strange, so Choi asked Richard and Co. how they defended against the constellations. They told him that it was closer to an armistice. They were not confident that they could conquer more land, and it was too costly for the humans to regain their land. Although it is true the truce could not just stay forever, at least it was working for now. It was thanks to the other constellations of Earth who promised to protect them. Hearing this, even the constellation of dreams and greed and the lava cat understand what must have happened. Even if constellations invade, they give power to their avatars and send them instead. Choi's was just a special case. While the balance was a bit off due to the attack of the new constellations, it ultimately returned to like how it was when the Abyss was first introduced. A situation where they tried to avoid an all-out war. Despite their greed for souls, they were not really prepared to suffer losses on their own end for them, so the truce lasted. Choi is still a bit sad about hearing all this. After all, he had trained for so many years only to find he was too late. But Lava Cat says that things are not so simple. Dream Girl also points out that the situation on Earth is not over yet even if he is a few decades late, because truces do not last forever. Further, there are way too many constellations that might invade in the future that will not be interested in a truce. Choi understands that if the situation turns out that serious, then Earth might become the center of the battle between constellations. Meanwhile, Odaigon is out clearing a few monsters here and there, and the people against Richard are following him around just throwing praises into the air, while Odaigon is disgusted by their behavior and walks away while the others can only imagine how well they might do if he goes to Earth, as he is close to an A-rank mage at the very least. As Choi sees the annoyed Odaigon walking towards him, he wonders if he is going to be alright. Richard is glaring at the opposite party, and Choi asks if he wants to fight those guys. Richard refuses with a panicked expression, although Choi had not meant it as a threat, but an offer of sincerity. Choi wonders if his morals are crooked after staying in the Abyss for a long time. Meanwhile, Lava Cat and Dream Girl, watching him like a darn live stream, are commenting that keeping a low profile might not be enough for Choi. If he were to be discovered by the constellations on Earth, he might become the trigger to the dreaded war. After assuring them that he will be careful, he asks Richard's partner how returners from the Abyss are treated. The guy says that they first check the returner's body and ask how he survived, and then check if he has made a contract with an evil constellation. Seeing Choi's confusion, he further explains that after evil constellations invaded the Earth, making contracts with them became illegal in most countries. Choi's two constellations' friends hurriedly assure him they are not evil. That aside, on hearing that Choi is Korean, the guy tells him that the rehabilitation process should be fairly easy, and especially beneficial for Odaigon who had lost his memories. After grasping all that, Choi tells Odaigon that he has got enough information about the situation on Earth and wants to check the hunter's skills. The Lava Cat tells him that there is a spell called Level Check that allows him to gauge someone's information and asks why he is asking Odaigon to do it. Choi is confused and says he simply cannot use magic. The cat is infuriated by this buffoon and screams that he does not even need to use his existential power and can easily use magic as it comes almost naturally to all constellations. Giving it a try, Choi's constellation eye is activated and he decides to read Richard's information first. A screen appears in front of him as the cat also tells him that the more he uses it, the more proficient he can become at getting information about his opponents. Meanwhile, with Odaigon's magic attacks, the dungeon is soon cleared as the people stare in disbelief. They had managed to survive hell and would be returning soon. And for Choi, who was away for so long, it was finally time to go back to Earth. While the system is notifying everyone that the dungeon is going to close, Choi is busy playing around with the constellation eye he has just found out about. He is currently checking out the adamantium frying pan. What he believed to be just a good cooking utensil turns out to be an A-rank weapon. With self-conquer active, even this small training of his constellation's eye increases his existential power. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon gate, reporters and people from the organization are gathered, anxiously waiting for a response from the gate. Suddenly it starts emitting energy and thunderous red strikes, alarming them and prompting the reporters to retreat. While they are waiting for monsters to come rushing out, they are shocked when the gate starts disintegrating away, and a bright golden light shines out in its place. Choi feels a sense of satisfaction as he stares at the Earth's sky for the first time in thousands of years. Later on, Richard Parker is giving a report of the dungeon to an officer from the Confederation. The officer, however, is arguing that seeing the results, it could have been nothing but a C-rank dungeon. Even though Richard tells him there were thousands of ghouls, the officer dismisses them as mere F-tier monsters. Despite not knowing the actual strength of the boss there, he says they have to label it as C-rank and cannot do anything about that. He merely wishes him well on his safe return, and that marks the end of their discussion. Meanwhile, Choi and Odegon are lounging in the rehabilitation center where Choi is surprised to find from online news articles that Richard is quite the celebrity. Odegon is a bit surprised as he felt no signs of royalty from Richard, and Choi dismisses that. He is more interested in how he can understand English well even though he is not good at it. The lava cat tells him that the constellation's eye can see through a lowly existence, and it would be weird for a constellation not to be capable of understanding mortals' languages. Just then, a lady doctor comes in and tells him that the results of his tests show that he is quite healthy. Further, his body looks so perfect that it is as if it was given by some god, and they find his mental state to be stable as well. Since it had been 30 years, she feels he might have a hard time rehabilitating and offers help if he wishes to move to another country. Choi has a feeling she does not want him here and just gives vague answers. On the other hand, Odegon seems to be getting approached by various people in suits who are trying to pull him over to America and enticing him with offers for hunters. Such is the treatment that high-ranking magic users receive that martial arts users can simply not relate to. With a sigh, Odegon finally states loudly that his answer will always remain the same. That is, he will always follow Sir Yonsung Choi no matter what. The agents are curious as to why Odegon is so loyal to him, but Choi does not divulge any information while having a playful smile on his face. The American agents can only speculate that it must be because Choi had been the first person Odegon saw after losing his memories. Knowing that Choi might be their key to Odegon, they try to make a few offers to him while asking if he really wants to move to another country. Choi appears uninterested and says he will think about it once he is let out of rehab. Seeing that they are discussing things amongst themselves a distance away from them, Odegon asks if he should show Choi what they are talking about by using his magic. On receiving his master's agreement, Odegon uses magic to let Choi hear their speech. They are discussing how Choi might actually stay in America after getting his green card, even if it is for a short while. However, another is more worried that other nations would also try to scout the magic user Odegon. They start discussing plans to put spies near him so others cannot approach him and decide to try constant persuasion. When Odegon asks if he can get rid of any spies, Choi simply tells him they should not complicate things or spill blood. There are still a few more processes a returner must go through before receiving a hunter's green card. While wearing patches, Choi is made to sit on a chair and take a test. The test mostly involves questions regarding his contact with evil constellations and writing a paragraph that mocks evil constellations he might have come in contact with. After all, that is the best way to determine if someone has made a contract with an evil constellation, since servants cannot mock their masters. Then there is a short test of their mana using a crystal ball. Choi is told to inject mana into the ball, which will supposedly help them measure how much mana he has. He decides to push in a lot of it, and the crystal ball starts glowing golden in color. The scientist is amazed at this, and before they know it, the crystal ball itself shatters into fragments with bright light, and tendrils of energy still being emitted from it. Choi says he still has some left and asks if he should do it again, but the startled examiner refuses, saying it is not necessary. In order to move around more freely, he has decided it will be better to get a higher rank than 30 years back and expects an A rank. The crystal ball meant for measuring mana had much more mana than the average hunter, so it would normally change color to calculate how much mana one had. But Choi's mana reserves were way beyond that of a normal hunter after all. The constellations ask if he really did not hide his power, or if he had erroneously failed to control his power. But although he is not used to holding back, the real reason he used all his power here is because he cannot let them find out about it out of nowhere. Earth was different from the Abyss after all, and one had to follow rules here. He cannot go looking for stronger opponents like he used to in the Abyss. A chance to rank up to an A-rank hunter was usually only given to a B-rank hunter and not a C-rank. For increasing his rank according to plan, he would have to take every chance he gets. Just then, the examiner informs him that they are done testing and tells him to wait while they prepare the results. Thus Choi heads over to another room wondering what rank he will get. Little does he know that some scheme is at play. and the doctor has called someone from the Ambitus clan to inform them of Choi's details. Later, when the hunters get their rank cards, Otagon turns out to be a B rank and Choi turns out to be C+ still, and his age was registered as 57 while he was supposed to be 28. He wonders if the average mana for hunters increased throughout the past 30 years when a familiar voice calls out from behind. Richard Parker has just arrived and tells him that he would like to repay Choi back for saving his life. As Choi must not have any place to stay after returning back in 30 years, he invites him over to his own place of residence, letting him stay for as long as they like. Inside a car with Richard while traveling through arid lands, Otagon tells Choi that Richard's sudden kindness feels suspicious to him. Choi feels sad that Otagon has developed such a stereotype of humans. He tells him if he remembers when Choi slayed a Kafenrir, and Otagon smiles smugly, saying he could never forget. After all, it was the day when he had saved them when they were in despair. And the fact was that Choi could not forget about it either. The goblins had praised him heavily and told him they had to pay him back somehow or the other. They had prepared gifts like acid slime baths and the offsprings of their nobility and more. While these might have been normal to do in their culture, Choi felt utterly uncomfortable at the gestures. Otagon, who hears about his uncomfort at this moment, is in absolute shock. Choi tries to push it aside and looks at Richard, explaining to Otagon that he probably wants to repay him back too. The Goblin King learns that humans might be annoyingly weak and greedy, but they still knew how to be grateful. Amusingly, Choi is still one of them, and Otagon forgot that fact yet again. Thereafter, Choi darts a conversation with Richard and learns that the Parker family is quite well known. Choi tells him he was wondering when Richard would give Choi all his life savings. Richard is flustered and anxious as hell on hearing that. Choi had overheard him saying he would give all his life savings to whoever saved him in the dungeon. Of course, Choi is just joking and the matter slides. He then proceeds to say that he does not want a lot, merely a place to settle in. Since he had been in the abyss for so long, he just could not get used to Earth yet. Unknown to them, a bearded guy watches their cars with curiosity from the mountains. Meanwhile, inside, Richard once again reassures Choi that it is absolutely fine if Choi stays at Richard's place. He can easily do that much for someone who had saved his life and tells Choi not to underestimate the Parker name. Otagon frowns and whispers to Choi that he feels Richard is being too arrogant after just lending a single house. Choi smiles and says one can indeed be arrogant if one has a large house on Earth. Just then, the tires of the car screech and the car goes out of control, skidding to a stop. The driver informs them that someone apparently crashed into the car. Choi wonders if it is an assassination from an evil constellation. But he dismisses that idea because if a constellation knew about him, they would have come themselves. Otagon offers to take care of it, but Choi suggests seeing who it is first. The first thing Choi sees on coming out is a maroon-colored Lambo that he had never expected to find in the middle of the desert. He thinks this is quite befitting for Americans. And not just Choi, but even Otagon can tell that the bearded person who just came out of the car is quite powerful compared to the average mortals he had seen recently. Choi finds it is an Asian and feels that he looks familiar. Richard Parker is the first one to recognize him and calls him Dragon Huang in a hurry. Coming forward respectfully, he introduces himself, and on being asked, acknowledges he is the youngest son of the Parker family. Richard is up in sweat and anxiety as Huang passes by him while saying that Alex seemed to be worried that Richard had become a hunter. Small talk aside, the Asian approaches Choi and mutters dreamily that it really was Yunsung. Choi is absolutely taken aback as he realizes that it is the clan leader Gyeongliang he knew from before he entered the abyss. The person named Huang expresses his surprise when he heard that Choi was out of the abyss and in America. He had heard rumors, so he had come over right away. It is a meeting with his previous clan leader, so of course the air feels tense after 30 years. While they are staring at each other, Richard is the first one to break the ice, asking Choi if he knows Dragon Huang. It is Huang who replies and says that they are indeed acquainted. Meanwhile, Choi cannot help but overhear how the guards accompanying Richard were talking about Huang being an S-rank hunter and having remarried the 19th time last month. The entire situation felt quite chaotic for Choi. Was this the very same clan leader who used to say that B-tier dungeons were too much for their skills? Let us take a brief look back in time, when Seoul was not an exception to the invasion in 2011. During the disaster, every hunter clan there had fought against the endless army of monsters and the leader of the unbeatable class. Gyeongliang Huang was also among them. Thanks to the efforts of hunters like him, Korea had been able to withstand the invasion. After a long and harrowing battle, they had done all they could and protected all they could. They should have been heroes, not just as a title, but in the way they were treated too. But even in the hospital, they told one of the clan members that the healing magic is not covered by insurance. His legs were crippled, and they told him he did not even meet the requirements for the hunter healthcare rewards, as getting hit by fragments did not count. It was extremely hard to find a hunter who could cure an injury after all. After the horrible treatment that Korea showed them, he lost faith in his country and came over to America instead, where he heard that hunters were treated well over here. He was supported by them and was able to fight monsters, start a business, and even end up here at his point. Choi is surprised hearing his story and wonders just how rich Hwang must be for the son of a rich family to kneel in front of him. Hwang answers the question with another question and tells him he lives in Hunter's Hill, the most expensive neighborhood in Los Angeles. Of course, how would Choi know about how great Hunter's Hill was? Hwang says Choi still speaks way too little and recalls the day he had disappeared after leaving a small letter saying he was going training in the abyss. The clan members had known he was crazy about training but did not think the crazy idiot was actually a psychopath. Some clan members even said they had to report him as dead as almost no one returns alive after entering the abyss. The old clan members even held a funeral for him. Considering all these things that had happened, Hwang had been utterly shocked when he heard Choi was back from the abyss. He turns to Richard as if remembering something and asks him why Choi is in Richard's car. In a panicked expression, Richard says that he was just repaying Choi for saving his life. Hwang ruffles his hair saying that he thought Richard was going to take him to his house to open him up or something. Since it was not the case, he forgives the kid. As they cross the bridge and reach Los Angeles, Hwang tells Richard to change the destination to his own house. Meanwhile, Choi is looking out the window, wondering about how 30 years really had passed and how the technology looked so much more advanced compared to back when he was at Earth. Los Angeles, often called the City of Saints, had become home to many rich and honorable hunters and their clans after the gate opened. Not only those hunters, but also fans who wanted to become clan members and merchants who focused on business with those hunters too, all settled in Los Angeles. This made it the city with the most hunters in the world. Juan is currently explaining how he had told the Americans to ensure that he is informed of all returners from the abyss, otherwise he would leave for another country. It had been fun seeing the FBI and CIA sending reports to him all the time, and Choi is surprised they do that all for him. Hwang dismisses the surprise, saying that it's a small price to pay to keep him from leaving for another country. Choi is still looking out and sees a large building and remarks that Hwang's house really is good, what with it being the size of an Olympic stadium and all. However, Richard informs him that it is probably just the house where Hwang's servants live. The actual mansion is still a bit further up, and boy is Dragon Hwang's residence like a damn palace. It's complete with private gardens and pavements lined with waterways and even an entire roundabout. The entire place is humongous. Seeing many hunters standing in the pavements, he wonders what is up. Hwang tells him that they are waiting in line to see him. Did that make sense? Nevertheless, Hwang explains that they were going through all that to see and ask him to give them a chance. Choi is amazed and asks what kind of chance he is talking about, so Hwang says he will explain slowly. Nevertheless, when they finally enter his residence, Choi is so amazed at what he sees that he doubts whether he is the one who returned from the abyss or Hwang. After all, who the hell keeps a whole darn family of pandas in their house? Choi asks if Hwang stole them, but the clan leader dismisses it as ridiculous, saying that the Chinese government had sent them as a gift, begging him to go there. Seeing that Choi was still so ignorant about the situation, Hwang snaps his fingers, and all of a sudden, many people in neat suits enter the room at once and stand in 2 straight lines. They answer to him, and he orders them to bring him the best tutors they can find, and teach Choi everything ranging from politics, economics, arts, world and local history, and every little subject there is to learn. While Richard comes out of Hwang's residence and leaves, the driver asks him if it is really alright if he takes the chance to see Dragon Hwang, since people wait for months for such a chance. Richard says he is a Parker, so he does not need to beg for a chance. Further, he feels scared as hell every time he is in his presence, so it's better for him to leave. Meanwhile, back in Hwang's mansion, he has just now ordered his assistants to bring him tutors who can teach Choi common sense of the present and other miscellaneous knowledge. Just then, one of the servants speaks up, saying that the scope of subjects he has given is just too broad, and asks if there is any reason behind it. When asked for his name, he says he is his 7th secretary Jackson, but oof, Hwang fires him the very next moment. He reasons that the reason he hires them for a lot of money is to carry out his challenging tasks and orders, and not for talking back. Furiously, he asks the others if they think of this as a joke. There are swift replies, after which he starts picking on them one by one, blaming them for making excuses and not carrying out his tasks perfectly. After giving them all an earful, he turns back to Choi, who is looking ahead in shock. When Hwang calls him to talk and get up to speed, the only thing Choi can say with a straight face is that his big bro has turned into a really shitty person. On hearing this, Hwang looks hurt and asks why he thinks so. On hearing that he shouldn't fire someone for a single mistake, he calls over the 7th secretary he was just about to fire and asks him how long he had worked there and how much he got paid. The answer came to 2 weeks for $230,000, my God. He had given them that much? But Choi looks unconvinced and says the salary has nothing to do with how he treats them. Huang still refutes, saying that they get the highest salary, but if they make a mistake, they get dismissed, so they know what they are in for. Choi shakes his head in disappointment, so even though Huang feels it's unfair, he tells the secretary that he is hired again. After the thankful secretary leaves, Huang asks if he really has to be in so much trouble, and Choi says that his former clan master should be a role model for others. Later on, a specialist in artifact and dungeon studies from Stanford is in a room with Choi to teach him about the situation in the world at present. On hearing her qualifications, our cute idiot Choi decides to introduce himself too, saying he used to bench deadliest and squat around 500 kilograms in high school. Putting humor aside, the teacher starts giving a brief explanation of events over the 30 years he had been gone. After around half an hour, Choi has gained a brief but shocking understanding that the places occupied by evil constellations were China, North Korea, Europe, and Central and Southern America. The evil constellation invasion in May of 2012 hit Northeast Asia, but his birthplace South Korea was one of the countries that fought well and was not occupied. However, later many South Korean hunters went abroad to foreign countries, especially for benefits. Choi even learns that Hwang Gyunryong had also left Korea during that period, and feels sad thinking about all the things he must have had to go through. The Hwang he knew was timid and hesitant, but now he was an S-ranked hunter and swimming in money. The Lava Cat constellation says that things have turned out well, so he should make Hwang one of his avatars since Choi trusts him well after all. But when Choi starts wondering about how awkward the situation will be when he tells his clan leader the truth, he can pretty much guess that Hwang will suspect he is doing drugs or some other stuff. However, jokes aside, Hwang would understand if Choi explained everything seriously, yet he seemed to have some reservations about him that the cat was curious to hear. However, the answer was not that he did not trust Hwang, but more of a fact that he did not want to drag his big bro into the affairs of the constellations. Later on, Hwang takes Choi and shows him around, finally coming to stop at a dome-like structure that looks like a greenhouse. But Hwang describes it as the jungle gym in his backyard. Coming inside, Choi sees that instead of looking like a backyard jungle gym, it looks more like a concert venue with all the empty space and glass walls. Hwang snaps his fingers and all of a sudden, the shapes making up the dome start darkening and a faint orange lining can be seen around each. Hwang and Choi start floating as Hwang seems excited that Choi is adapting pretty quickly. Meanwhile, Lava Cat is surprised at this magic that she calls the other side of the world magic. It is a popular spell among constellations that mortals should not normally know how to use. Just then, they stop floating and Hwang says that the stabilization is complete. He tells him that if they get injured during a fight here, they will not be injured in real life, and it's like a super immersive virtual reality game magic. Choi is surprised as Hwang explains that constellations use it to train their avatars while the cat says they use it as entertainment when bored. Choi asks Hwang if he learnt the magic from a constellation, but it appears that it has become a very common magic on Earth. Despite that, Hwang says that it might have been taught to someone with evil intent, as they did not know how devious constellations are. After the small talk, Choi says that considering such a good war training area is available, the Earth hunters must be very well prepared. But Hwang laughs at this and tells him that it is used for sports, and not those old games like soccer or other things. The forefront of entertainment in the current world is hunter sports. One of the games in hunter sports happens to be the 6-Star League, where 6 hunters fight against another team of hunters in different matches with varied rule sets. All in all, the stimulation of the game that Choi sees there looks pretty interesting. Just then, the system notification tells him that he is required to limit his strength, otherwise the other side of the world might break down. Choi understands because human cast magic could not possibly be enough for constellations, as system prompts continue to appear about his strength, agility, stamina, and other things getting limited. He feels surprised like he is carrying a lot of weights. Suddenly his title, Master of the Self, activates and notifies him that his power of existence will increase if he fights when his power is limited. This starts exciting our musclehead Choi, who grins, realizing that even this can be considered training. The Cat of Lava and Magma also tells him that this is a good opportunity, as other constellations cannot watch him when inside a dungeon or this spell, so he can use his power of existence however he likes. He wonders if he should reveal his identity to his Hyung and make him his avatar, but holds back since he is still reluctant to involve someone who is living well. And either way, making others, for example, his avatars, fight was never his style to begin with. The cat says that if he fights with other constellations, he will definitely need an avatar, as it is really rare for constellations to fight in person. Sighing, he decides to think about it later. Suddenly Hwang asks if he is feeling shocked with how things have advanced in 30 years. Choi just remarks that hunter training seems a lot more realistic due to this magic. Huang shakes his head and repeats that this is not training but the most popular sport in the world. Choi is still having trouble grasping the idea that such technology and magic isn't used for training, but rather just for hunters fighting for fun. Although Huang says it's a competitive sport, Choi is still unconvinced. Yet the clan leader tells him that it is stupid to even compare baseball and soccer to something like the Six-Star League. Something more comparable would be the UHC, which is also a hunter sport. It is a competition where hunters fight one-on-one, and once a person watches the UHC, other combat sports become boring. He asks Choi if he feels excited hearing about all these new things, but Choi just denies it. Huang laughs, asking if it is because he knows Huang is the strongest. Choi is quiet for a moment before replying that he is bewildered. He had been focused on the Earth crisis, training the hell out of his body since he was worried he might be late, and had always been searching for a way to return to Earth. He did all that, but the hunters on Earth have simply become sports stars. This is quite disheartening. However, the Lava Cat says he should still be careful, as the constellations are familiar with the SSL and UHC too. It might be unfamiliar to him who does not really have any avatars, but for constellations with avatars, these are like proxy wars. The spread of the magic called the other side of the world may have something to do with the proxy wars too. Choi wonders if they purposefully spread the magic in order to find avatar candidates. Meanwhile, Huang is still explaining that hunters nowadays do not have any dungeon experience, and they become hunters only for money and fame. If there is a sport that one likes, one can try it. With a little bit of success, one will earn more money than they will ever have use for. Those lining up in front of his house all want that opportunity. After saying his fill, Huang asks Choi about his life the past few years, and why he had gone to the abyss for training, if perhaps he had been scammed. Seeing Choi's long face, Huang became sure of it. It is a long story, but before Choi can explain, he requests Huang to lift the power limit of the other side of the world's magic. He says he feels bothered by the restrictions. Huang says that this room was adjusted for A-rank hunters, so he should not have a problem. Choi explains that although he was given a C+ rank, his martial arts could not be properly assessed. He broke the measuring device with his inner energy, but it was apparently not enough for a higher rank. Huang says that if it was enough to break the ball, then the examiner must have been bribed, so he will look into it later. That aside, he reasons that if the current limitations are uncomfortable for him, then he must have become really strong. Then when asked, Choi says it is a long story and Huang tells him to make it short. Choi releases a bit of his aura and says that he went there in order to protect Earth. Huang quietly apologizes for asking for the short version and asks for the long one. After receiving a hefty explanation, he understands that he had wandered around and become a constellation, and now Choi had returned to protect Earth, essentially making Choi a senior to Huang. Of course, Choi, our dear idiot, had expected Huang to believe all that from the very beginning since he was a big bro to him. But Huang is still doubtful as many returnees from the abyss were crazy. Just then, Choi asks him if he will believe Choi if he sees his ability. Seeing his confidence, Huang can understand that the reason why he asked to lift the restrictions in the first place was so he could tell the truth. Huang has a fierce look in his eyes as he says that no matter how strong Choi has become, he has never seen an S-rank hunter. Meanwhile, Huang claims that he himself has come close to dying during such fights, and received an A+ ranked skill called the leveling up via death skill. Choi smirks, saying that he has been reading too many fiction novels, and Huang returns the taunt back to him as he launches himself in the air for a fight. Huang replies by saying that they were both nerds, so neither could criticize the other. While in the air, a pink light glows on his wrist like a tattoo that Huang announces are tattoo-type artifacts. Choi merely looks up, slightly interested, but unfazed. The numerous magic missiles launched from Huang fly towards Choi at an incredible speed, but seeing him standing still, Huang shouts at him to dodge in panic. Choi says there is no need and merely lifts a finger. With energy leaking from the finger, he fires a straight beam of pure mana that breaks most of the missiles in the direct line of fire and grazes Huang's cheek. Huang kneels and touches the ground and casts the 6th circle of magic, the Path of Lava. Choi asks where the heck he even learnt this kind of magic. Huang curses as he feels Choi is looking down on him. He then uses a spear of pure fire, another 6th circle magic. Choi simply makes a protective key shield around himself that dissipates the spear before it can even get near him. Huang looks at it and is shocked, shouting that he thought it was only a fake rumored skill spread by the Chinese. Realizing that even such simple things are fake, Choi is really depressed. Just then, he feels that he is low on energy already. This is because he used a Kai shield when his strength was limited. He has to control his strength to make sure he does not break the reverse world, so it is quite a pain for him. It has been a while since he has fought like a human, so he decides to maximize the efficiency of his mana usage. Making a compressed ball of mana, he sends it towards Huang, who finds that he might not be able to dodge it at the speed it is approaching. Although he tries to use short-distance teleport, he fails as his magic is destroyed by Choi's powerful aura, and he takes damage due to the rebound. The speed of Choi's attack simply shocks him, and he decides he has no other choice than to strengthen his own body with magic. Just when he is about done and is going to taunt Choi again, he is cut off mid-sentence as Choi has already moved and locked his body in a tackle. Choi smiles and asks if Huang was really trying to use close-range combat against a martial arts user. Even Huang realizes his rash mistake and acknowledges that it is because he has not fought a martial artist in a long time. After the fight is over, they sit down and Huang asks what level of martial arts Choi really is at. He says he is above the pinnace level, that is the supreme peak level. If one goes beyond that, they can exceed mortality. Huang tries to process that information as he realizes that Choi really has become a constellation and simply finds it ridiculous. Choi replies that seeing how even Huang had changed was a surprise to him. Huang retorts that he was successful, and Choi throws it right back at him. After the fact has sunk in, Huang finally asks what exactly Choi wants from him, since he is now a constellation. Choi started explaining how the ceasefire that had been agreed to by the constellations and the humans was only temporary, and new constellations might emerge from the abyss at any time. The constellations currently in ceasefire might even be plotting to take over Earth behind their backs, and they would never know. The constellations already have multiple servants on Earth, and they are already very well known, while Choi, on the other hand, will have to start from scratch, so he is at a disadvantage because of being late. Huang stopped him and asked what he meant by the fact that he was originally going to ask for help. He asks Choi if he is no longer going to do so. Choi shakes his head. Huang is already living his life, so he does not want to drag him into this hardship. As Huang hears this, he feels ashamed, as the youngster of his old clan was protecting Earth from hardship in the abyss for 10,000 years, while he was here just trying to act cool because he was older. Smashing his fist into the ground, he says that Choi should not be worried about Huang and he wants to help. Choi says he really does not want to ruin his already good life, and Huang shouts out saying that he will help him no matter what. Choi nods as he finally gives in, while the lava cat is delighted by his skills at conversation and baiting others. However, what the cat does not know is that it was what Choi honestly felt. He did not want a person he knew to get caught in a fight between constellations, but it did not seem like his clan leader would back off either. This was how his big bro had always been after all. He thus sends Huang his offer of being Choi's servant and tells him to accept it. Huang is a bit hesitant, seeing that he has to serve under someone younger, but Choi is a constellation after all, so he accepts in the end and becomes tied to him. The system notifies that if he disobeys the rules of the constellation, then he will receive penalties, and as a servant of the constellation, he will become even stronger. Choi, Huang, and Odagon are all sitting at a table having some beverages, while Huang is remarking on how he had never thought he would be entering a contract with a constellation. Serving under a constellation meant selling one's soul to them and having all of one's moves monitored. But Choi assures him that he will not monitor his every move, so he does not have to worry. He then explains that the primary plan is to first hide the fact that he is a constellation for a start. He says he has to keep increasing the number of servants he has while hiding the fact that he is a constellation, as he needs the servants for when he runs into other constellations. After that, Choi asks Huang if he will be able to win in a 1-1 fight with a great demon. Huang says that it is unreasonable to defeat them one-on-one, as a hunter always participates through party play and raids. Seeing Choi's doubtful expression, he assures him that he will not lose because both in the SSL or UH, whether it is a team play or solo, he is confident. He will not be intimidated at all, even if it's a battle with a constellation. Choi ponders over how the magic used in sports called alternate universes is frequently used by the constellations as well. It is strange that humans partake in hunter sports using magic. The cat explained that the constellations battled in the same manner by sending out their servants to battle each other. It was highly possible that other constellations have intended the hunter sports to become popular, since it becomes easier to select their servants based on their performance levels. Choi believes that is too wild of a speculation to think that constellations watch this type of crap. However, the lava cat says it will be quite entertaining for him to watch this, and that he should not underestimate the boredom of the constellations. Even at this moment, most constellations writhe in agony of their boredom as they speak. Either way, Choi concludes that if servants were to fight like Earth's hunter sports, it will be a huge advantage for him since he is used to fighting in this fashion after all. And as important as it was to increase the number of servants, one needed to become the object of their envy. In other words, fame worthy of the strongest hunter. When an A-class dungeon opens, this is the type of hunter that the nation's government will plead and beg for assistance. As much as people claim that their nation's hunter is the strongest, they know deep down which hunter remains the strongest in the world, This leads to faith and devotion. Huang understands. Choi definitely had the skills, but the problem was how to showcase it to the world. Huang decides to introduce Choi to a clan. Although Choi starts to joke, he shuts up when Huang gets serious and explains that he is in charge of multiple groups at present. There is not just one single clan, but an entire company group where the profits are out of this world. All cores and items in dungeons are purchased by the company as well as the additional support and bonuses. As long as one is able to prove their loyalty, they will be rewarded handsomely, so it is a much wanted spot. But despite hearing all that, Choi does not understand why Huang wants him to join a clan. Huang scolds him and tells him that he needs to hide his powers adequately. Choi stares at his hands and remarks that although he managed to limit his powers down to max level, as long as he can control it well, he can battle classes from A to S. Huang tries to ignore that indirect hurt he got from that statement, and tells him he will send Choi to a clan where they take top candidates so he can look for servants there. However, Choi asks if they will really like it if a C+ ranked martial arts user joins their clan. Huang says they will not like it at all, so he can do nothing but suggest Choi to rank up. As long as Choi reached A class, he would become utterly recognized, and even further and highly decorated individuals will be honored as S class. Just then, Choi realizes that Huang is also quite amazing for having reached S class, since it is a title that is given to less than 10 people in the entire world. Huang tells him to go ahead and start everything they can, starting with the preliminaries for the UHC. Seeing Choi's confusion, Huang states that many hunters wish to compete in the UHC, but they have to get through the preliminaries to be accepted as professionals in the league. Thus, he tells Choi to go to the preliminaries in a week and get himself used to it until then. Choi does not understand what he should get used to, so Huang passes him a smartphone. He says this is what they use for everything nowadays, including watching the news. Seeing the screen, he tries to play around with it and reaches the news section where he finds the name of Chang-sik mentioned and recalls something. Meanwhile, Huang has gone over and is giving instructions in his office to prepare the hunter department to re-evaluate a person. Further, he says that he needs a trustworthy manager, and his current servants do not make the cut. So he asks them where her daughter is. Ironically, he has so many daughters that he has trouble figuring out which one. Finally, he decides on the one with the worst temper, the A-class manager. Seeing they have understood who he is referring to, they accept the orders to bring over Ain Lawrence. However, Huang is not sure she will take a liking to Choi, as he is quite tricky to handle as well. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Ain is managing and criticizing a hunter named Vagan for their incapability. She scolds him, saying that just because he has a lot of mana does not mean he can handle a high circle magic. However, Vagan argues that he is already C+ class and has received scouting offers from big clans, so it is unacceptable for her to make him practice one circle magic repeatedly. She looks at him with disappointed eyes and just silently leaves. The person standing outside the room bows as he sees her. She tells him that Vagan does not deserve to be trained, so she does not want to manage him. He does not refute and merely apologizes before entering the room. After entering the room, he starts kicking Vagan, who is still lying on the ground, and curses the heck out of him. Calling him a dumb, he says that she is Miss Ain, a B-class hunter and renowned manager who raises rookies into precious gems in their clan. This was Ain Lawrence, Huang's 11th daughter and the special A-class manager. At the moment, Choi arrives at the preliminary competition venue with Odaigan. He is refreshed to see the crowd of hunters who look the same as ever, as people of various origins are thrown into the mix. He asks Huang's assistant following him if the person who wins the tournament will become a pro and what else he needs to know. The assistant says that it is the preliminaries for the C-class league, so there will be a lot of D and E-class hunters joining in as well. There will always be other opportunities, so he asks him to take it easy and treat this as a learning experience. Choi just agrees and walks forward. Meanwhile, Odaigan, who is on the phone right now, is playing a game that eerily looks like Temple Run, but with a goblin as the main character. Choi tells the Goblin King to stop playing games and wait for him there. After hearing a sincere reply, he leaves and wonders if this will take a whole day. Inside the competition lounge hall, he can find various types of people like reporters, people from broadcasting companies, and even clan recruiters. One of them is scratching their head, cursing his team leader for sending him here as he believes it's a waste of time. A person near him remarks that they should just wait with patience for decent hunters and asks if he's new here. The clan recruiter says he is there from a clan. What he does not divulge is that he is the Ambitus clan's recruiter, Kwepi. The Ambitus clan is the one who had received information about the crystal ball readings of Choi. Their leader had received a phone call saying that the measuring device had shattered and had wondered if it had been faulty. But the examiner had assured him that the device was absolutely fine. The recruiter had checked that he had passed all the tests and did not have abnormalities either. The clan leader had also received information that he was from 30 years ago and a martial arts user. Coupe had asked if he should send someone to recruit him, but the leader still had doubts. Yet, he did not want to miss the 1 millionth chance that it might be true either. Thus he told Coupe to go and confirm it with his own eyes and ask Choi to learn magic if he has decent mana. When the clan leader ordered so, Coupe had no choice but to come. Thus he waits expectantly to see how good the returner named Choi is with his martial arts. As soon as Choi enters the arena, he is notified by the system that he needs to control his power, or the virtual world will be destroyed. After a lot of effort, Choi finally manages to suppress it. As a result, his skill called Subdue the Strong and Assist the Weak has been activated, and he decides that he will be able to use Fist Key to a certain extent, and Fist Hurricane as well. Furthermore, due to the restraints, his existential power would increase manifolds as a result of fighting here. Seeing him mumbling weird stuff, Choi's opponent asks if he is crazy, but Choi just replies nonchalantly. The opponent taunts him, but the referee intervenes saying that they will be disqualified if they fight before the signal is given. During the match, one can use any skills as much as they want, and when one surrenders or when both are incapable of fighting, the match ends. While listening to this, Choi is just stretching his arms and yawning like he is bored. The audience who are watching the live stream cannot help but comment that he is probably being arrogant, but also welcome the good showmanship. For these stream viewers, it is their first time in a long while seeing a martial arts user, and Choi is almost like a living fossil to them. Meanwhile, the people who are assessing the performance of the candidates are going through his data and are shocked to find that he is a martial arts user. They are all thrown into shock as they realize that martial arts users are still around. It had been way too long since they last saw one. It is the opponent's first time fighting against a martial arts user. When the opponent learns that Choi is a martial arts user, he decides to put distance between them as soon as the match starts. Thereafter, he would use the second circle float magic and use a strengthened magic missile. As the referee's countdown ends, the match starts, and the opponent jumps back in an instant. He thinks he is faster but cannot finish his sentence as Choi's fist comes hurling at him the very next millisecond. The fist hits him square in the face and he is sent flying as he crashes against the wall of the arena. Losing consciousness, he falls to the ground with a dull thud. As the onlookers stare in obvious shock, the referee has no choice but to declare the end of the match and declare Choi's win. Seeing it end so soon, contrary to the audience's expectations, Choi feels utterly disappointed. The Ambitious clan's recruiter is just as shocked, but does not lose a moment to call his clan leader and inform him that Choi is a real gem. The clan leader says that it is unexpected to have found one in martial arts, so he tells him to try scouting him. Later, when Choi is back in the waiting room and is watching the matches on the broadcast with disinterest, a voice calls out to him from behind. He turns around to see the recruiter whom he remembered seeing a while ago. This happens to be Coupe, who immediately starts flattering Choi and gives him his card as an introduction. He says that Choi might already know, but being a hunter these days is no longer the same as in the past. So compared to hunters who fought before, they cannot even be considered hunters. Choi, however, replies that it is all right as long as the hunters are strong and well-trained. Skipping the small talk, the recruiter informs Choi that he is from the Ambitious clan and is there to scout him. Seeing his expression change, Coupe presses on, asking if he has heard of them. Choi dismisses it, saying he is a returner, so he could not have heard of them in any way. Just how is Coupe planning to recruit Choi, and will his offers prove tempting enough to our young constellation? There's a long road ahead after all.